And you're live on Newsfile. My name is Evans Mensah. Samson Ladayin is off. He is going to be back next week. We have a packed show this morning. We're going to start with that 80 billion Ghana cedi debate, Ghana's debt stock. Well, in the last 2 years, that's how much the minority says government has accumulated by way of debt. Government says that isn't exactly the accurate picture, and there's a lot to show for what they borrowed. The minority disputes that. We'll try and see if we can settle the debate with those who know this matter inside out. Also here on Newsfile, the University of Ghana today, this week, was in the news with a survey that he had published about the performance of members of parliament. The MPs were upset. The Speaker of Parliament was upset as well. And they are calling for a committee to probe the matter. But why? This is a university doing its academic work, independence of thought. The research, provocative as it sounds, are the results justified? Does it reflect the reality on the ground and the way you relate with your member of parliament? We'll delve into that as well. And then also, the controversy surrounding the arrest of the NDC National Chairman Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, implications for national security. Linked closer to that is a case of the two kidnapped Canadian women. They have been rescued. What lessons for similar unsolved cases? These are the matters we will be examining here on Newsfile this morning. You want to stay with us because after the break, I have a fascinating guest to present to you. Throughout the show, we'll be changing a lot of them because the matters are really very interesting to probe from various angles, and we have all covered for you. Stay with us here on Newsfile. You're live on Newsfile. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. It's also on the Joynews channel on Multi TV. My name is Evans Mensah. With me for this particular segment of the show is Professor Godfrey Bokwing. He is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana. Also with me this morning is Ace Ankuma, who is a lawyer. Also joining us this morning on the show is Ahassan Suhini, MP for Tamale North. And we are also going to be joined, in fact, we've been joined by his documents. And if you're watching on, TV, you see his documents are resting quite comfortably on the table. He's going to be in his seat shortly. Abdul Malik Kweku Bako is also our guest for this particular segment. And we'll start with the big conversation surrounding Ghana's debt. Is it 80 billion? Is it not? But what's the big deal, really? What's the real implication of that? We'll delve into that shortly. Remember, the Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Eden Heights, welcome home. Also, MoneyGram, bringing you closer. Unique Insurance, we are paying all minor motor claims within 2 hours. Penfield School Limited, Penfield, a higher calling, a greater good. Now, this week, this debt conversation played out. The minority started a debate. Government responded. The minority came back. Government responded again. So we'll attempt to see if we can settle the debate. But let's see how this unfolds and the various positions expressed on both the minority and government sides.
Back on the very thing he and his party said in opposition about borrowings. In other breath, some government functionaries, including the information minister, have also claimed that the borrowed funds have gone into government initiatives such as free senior high school, planting for food and jobs, 1 district, 1 factory, 1 village, 1 dam, $1 million per constituency, among others. But colleagues, let me say that is the same people that said to us that 1 village, 1 constituency, 1 factory is a private sector initiative, and obviously government of Ghana is not paying for it. Or 1 district, 1 factory. It's a private sector initiative, and government of Ghana is not investing in it. All of a sudden, they've turned around to say that that is what they've used the public debt for. Incredible. Unfortunately, we have done the calculation, and we can confidently say that so far, all their initiatives put together is not up to 3 billion Ghana cedis per annum. So the question we ask is, Nasikano Wahi, where is the money? Where is the money? We wish to remind the minister and his government, that his government had boasted about raising domestic revenue. Now, in conclusion, the foregoing shows that President Akufo-Addo has been unable to keep his word in opposition not to borrow. He has also failed to prudently utilize the heavy borrowing in a manner that is sustainable or in investment that can add value to the economy. Instead, he has pumped these expensive borrowed funds in this unsustainable consumption expenditure with little or no bearing on rapid development of the country. The lack of tangible outcomes has influenced the adoption of a deceptive narrative to explain away the poor performance. We call on the president to admit that he has not been candid with the people of Ghana in the management of the economy. We must also admit that his borrowing policy has pushed Ghana into unsustainable debt, which future generations will struggle to pay.
We want to start by stating emphatically that government has not borrowed 80 billion Ghana cedis in 2.5 years. Ghana's domestic market can never even raise that kind of money in 2.5 years. Our market is not as liquid as that. A strange kind of assertion that is being made must first be examined by the fact that even if you claim 80 billion has been borrowed in 2.5 years, does the market have what it takes to even raise 80 billion Ghana cedis in 2.5 years? The answer is no. Now, with regards to external loans, all of those loans are given approvals by Parliament in accordance with Article 181 of the Constitution 1992 and Sections 55, 56, 57 of the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921, for which the minority is party. And you can add up all the loans that this administration has taken to Parliament, and it will not come anywhere near 80 billion. Indeed, if there was a list of loans that add up to 80 billion, you'd imagine that the minority would put out that list by now. But the reason for which our debt stock today will show a difference of about 80 billion is that the figure is a nominal public debt stock figure. And the public debt stock figure is made up of a number of things. Number one, old loans that are now being disbursed within the tenure of this administration add to the public debt stock. It doesn't mean that the administration has gone to borrow money. And I'll give you an example. If you take, for example, the railway works going on between Taman and Pakadang, which is financed by an Indian Exim facility, every new $1 that they release is added to our debt stock. Did the Akufo-Addo administration borrow that money? No.
So you had the Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, who is the information minister. Earlier you had Kesela Tofor-Singh, former deputy finance minister under the John Mahama administration. He's also the minority spokesperson on finance. And so I want to start with you, Prof. And it's a quick fire questions because the numbers are numbers. And so it's a good place to start. You cannot, it can't be two numbers on a mass size, right? So have we borrowed 80 billion in the last 2.5 years or not? Just yes or no. I think it can help. And then we can go into the other things.
So it's very difficult to say.
Oh, it's not yes or no answer.
It's very difficult to
interesting.
say yes because not all of them will constitute pure borrowing. There are variations in the debt stock as a result of exchange rates developments. So for instance, if you are looking at the CD version of the public debt, then you have to convert the external debt assuming they are denominated in dollars. So assuming 2 years ago, the CD to the dollar was, let's say, 4.5, and you owed $25 billion. You're going to convert that to CDs. But assuming the dollar amount hasn't changed, but your CD had depreciated to, let's say, 5.4, then you realize that the CD amount today would have gone up, not because you have gone for additional loan, but because the CD has what? Depreciated. Then there are also variations when it comes to when the loan that was contracted is being disbursed. for which reason it has been realized or actualized. But whether you look at it in terms of whether nominal or whatever, the debt stock had gone up significantly.
Okay.
So you can look at it from end to end and say that if end of 2016, the debt stock was, let's say, 132 billion or 122 billion, and end of March 2019 is 198 billion, then it's a very simple matter of just looking at the difference. And then you can see that this is how much the debt has gone up.
Okay, so
say that...
So on that point you made, and so that we can help viewers and listeners, you're quoting from the recent monetary policy report published by the Bank of Ghana. If you do the difference, you come to some 50 billion from last year March to this year March.
Yes.
Can we hold on to that and say at least within 1 year we borrowed 50 billion cedis?
So in cedi terms, all of that would not constitute fresh borrowing.
Okay.
Part of that will be as a result of exchange rate variations.
Okay.
And that again, your debt stock would have gone up, but it doesn't mean you have taken
fresh loans.
Fresh loans.
Okay.
Part of the loans that are also taken are for liability management, because the way we have managed our debt over the years is to do what we call rollover, because we don't really have active sinking fund. So when our debt mature, we don't have any buffer anywhere. So we take fresh debt to retire the maturing debt. Sometimes we run into rollover risk. We take fresh debt at higher cost to retire maturing debt at lower cost. We have had all of that over the years. So I think that the real issue is that, so we have listened to the MPP when they were in opposition and now that they are in government. We have also listened to the NDC when they were in government and now that they are in opposition. The reality on the ground is that we can't do without borrowing.
Okay.
It's impossible. The structural rigidity in our economy does not change in response to political propaganda. You see, any country that is inefficient...
That's a very good soundbite. Please repeat it.
So I was just trying to... There are structural rigidities in our economy that do not change just because there's a change in government. And then there is political propaganda or whatever.
Okay.
The reality has come to all of us, both the NDC and then the MPP. My understanding is that with that experience from both parties, we should be able to approach certain national issues with a common agenda and interest to address and get the electorates along.
Okay.
Is very, very important. Any country that is inefficient at collecting taxes in the face of rising expectations for improved services, deteriorating infrastructure that needed to be repaired, enhanced, maintained, and the need to drive inclusive growth cannot do without borrowing. Okay. Way back, look, there's a historical perspective to all of this. So at independence, our reserves was $269 million. Our debt stock record suggests by 1960 was practically zero. By the end of 1965, Ghana's debt stock had risen to about $500 million. We had slump in commodity prices. The solution, we couldn't find it internally. The then president headed for the IMF in 1965. After the program was designed, he rejected it. It wasn't long, his government was overthrown. 1966, we went back to the IMF. One of the key issues for going there was an unsustainable debt levels that we had accumulated because the economy wasn't expanding, and also we were unable to generate sufficient tax revenue. We went through all of that. Remember the unceremonious and unilateral debt repudiation by General Champon in early 1970s. It has to do with debt stock. The famous Yentia.
Even though he eventually paid.
Yes, of course.
But by that time, our credibility was
gone.
Yeah.
When the reality
lost
hits
it.
you.
And that itself triggered some changes even at the international level
Yeah.
in terms of how they transacted with us. So we went through all of that. How much was that even at that time? The external debt component, we are told around 94-point-something million US dollars. We had challenges. So Ghana has struggled since independence to manage our debts. And it's simply because we are unable to collect sufficient tax revenue in order to fund the numerous expenditures that have to be done. Let's fast forward a bit. Towards the end of 2000, our debt stock was life-threatening. Debt to GDP ratio was around 126%, 130%. We're spending more than 60% of our tax revenue just to service our debt. We found salvation in HIPIC. Then we finished that in 2004. And then there was a second component called the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative. We finished that in 2006. When we were done, our debt stock came to less than 30% of GDP. You know what that meant? We had borrowing space. We could scale up infrastructure investment, inject growth into the economy. We started climbing up quite quickly.
We started borrowing more.
We started borrowing, precisely. By the end of 2007, problems had started. Exchange rate market, we had to sell Ghana Telecom to get dollars. A whole lot of things happened. Between July 2009 under President Mills and July 2012, Ghana was under an IMF program. One of the key issues was about debt stock. We finished that. Between August and December 2012 for the elections, the physical slippage was very huge. We couldn't recover. We went through extended election verification, whatever. By the middle of 2014, it was obvious the economy was in trouble. We had a homegrown fiscal consolidation policy that came from the Senchi Consensus. It didn't work. We made a call to the IMF, August 2014. One of the key objectives of the just ended IMF program was to restore debt sustainability. So as early as 2014, our debt situation was not sustainable. We had entered the phase that we call high-risk debt distress category. Then, from 2014. Guess what? Again, debt sustainability is perhaps one of the areas where the just ended IMF program failed convincingly.
Okay, so we didn't deliver on that.
We didn't deliver on that. From where the NDC left over, from where the MPP took over, we could not deliver on debt sustainability. There are debt sustainability thresholds that we use. One of them is debt to GDP ratio. It's not really a good measure. I mean, of course, it tells us the debt burden, how hard it will be to pay off all of our debts with 1 year's output in terms of goods and services.
We have 56% of GDP now.
Yeah, but there's no requirement to pay off all our debt with 1 year's output.
Government says that is sustainable.
Well, it's sustainable because something happened.
Rebasing.
But it was the same rebasing we did in 2009 that created a false impression that we were rich, but we didn't have it in our pocket. And we were unable, to collect sufficient tax consistent with our new status as a lower middle income country. That was a problem. Then we had the single spine and all of that. Yeah. So as we speak, every cedi tax revenue that we generate as a country, about 54 pesos of that goes to wages, salaries, gratuities, and all of that. You can verify this from the 2019 budget. Then about more than 45 pesos of every cedi tax revenue we generate as a country goes to debt servicing. And the debt servicing is what is budgeted for in the national budget. The principal component is not taken through that. It's done through rollover. So when you pick the 2019 budget, Ghana government has to set aside approximately 19 billion cedis just to service our debt. Then approximately 23 billion cedis for wages and salaries. When we add these two, we have practically nothing left from the tax revenue that we generate. Then come to think of it, given all the promises that the government has made, and in fact, when you put all the promises the parties made in 2016, both in opposition and government today, they are just a little fewer than all the promises contained in the Bible. The question is, with this limited...
Do you want him to repeat that?
Yeah, I like his soundbite. He's giving us a lot.
So the issue is that, and yet we have deteriorating infrastructure. There's the need to drive growth. And you see, even though this government has done, should I say, well to some extent, in terms of the macro numbers, we haven't seen growth that came along with job creation. We have seen growth that is driven by hydrocarbon production, oil and gas. But we are unable to derive sufficient cash flow benefit from that sector that is driving growth. Yeah, because of also the financial arrangements in that sector. So because of that, we have expenditures recurrent, the bulk of them, we can't do anything about them, and yet our revenue envelope remains dwarfed. That's what the problem is. So, and I'm disappointed to some extent with this government that given all that they said when they were in opposition about the fact that the money is here, we can find the money here, we can generate a lot of tax revenue, we will rationalize the tax exemptions. They have not been able to deliver on that.
Is that a reality check? Like,
yeah,
you say, but now you're actually in power. You realize that
precisely.
The reality is different from what you perceive.
You know, we talked about tax exemptions. Look, when you look at the 2014 budget, there was something about rationalizing tax exemptions. We failed. Check the 2015 budget. There was something about tax exemptions. We failed. Check 2016 budget. There was something about tax exemptions. We failed. We have failed successfully over this period. So, and you see, these are companies, multinationals, that are in tax-paying position.
They can pay.
I mean, come on.
So why give them exemption?
We have had experts from the IMF, from the World Bank, advise us to rationalize our tax exemptions. Look, there's something in economics we call our tax frontier. Our theoretical tax frontier is very huge. In fact, when we benchmark ourselves against our peers, our tax effort should be around 24 to 25%. You know what we are doing currently? Based on the new GDP series.
Tax frontier, that's how much tax, if you're maximizing our effort.
Precisely.
That is
our
how
tax
much tax we okay, good.
Our tax potential. And the next stage is to be able to convert your tax potential into actual. So our tax effort currently, based on the new GDP series, is just around 12.6%. When we can do 50. When we should be doing 24% or 25%. Okay. So the difference between this and 24% is an output gap that we have to be able to close to our advantage. And we are unable to do that. You know why? Empirical evidence suggests that any country that is corrupt is also inefficient at collecting taxes. It nets off at some point in time. I haven't done the work here. I'm just telling you what I've read as an academic. Just to give you, because you see, in this country, anytime there's a regime change, you also find certain companies that change their board. The old guys who lost, they exit. And then the new guys who are also coming, sometimes.
Including multinational companies.
Precisely. Yeah. Perhaps is the way to maintain their charter.
Fantastic point. Hold that.
Don't hold me accountable for this.
No, there are a few companies that jumped to me, but hold that thought. I'll come back to you. Ace.
Oh well, I thought we'd hear from our last one.
But I'll bring you in again.
I'm glad we're Prof ended. It's Prof, right?
Yes.
Yes. I'm proud of him.
He taught me company law 1 and company law 2.
Yeah. And even without knowing that, whenever he spoke, I got sound bites and put on social media. I like the way he expressed it. Now, You know, years ago, I moonlighted as a tax person. That's why I did grad work. It's a matter of revenue.
Yeah.
What you have and what you don't have. To get your revenue, we have to look at what do you sell? What are you putting out there? What are people buying? What are we selling? Primary products. We do not determine the prices of our primary products. For the very first time, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are attempting a cartelization. But that has never happened. That is why between us, we produce close to 70% of the world's cocoa, make a measly, I don't know, $2-3 billion. And the world's chocolate market is 100 billion. And the entire Africa has only 3%. And so we don't control the prices. So the farmer, the Wafakonro in Achanse farming cocoa, doesn't determine the price of his cocoa seeds. But the person who makes BMW determines the price of his BMW. And so there's a great imbalance. So we just produce for the buyer to tell us how much they're going to pay for it. And that's why in one of my speeches, I say that the story of Baba Black Sheep is the story of Ghana. We don't control the wool. If you ask us, have you any wool? One for the master, one for the dame, one for the little boy down the lane. We don't have any. And they determine the price. Now, what the other bit is that, so you sell, but you don't control what you receive from selling. 2, what do you raise? That is what brings us into this problem. Now, you can decide that you print money, deficit financing, and kill the economy. So you just ask Bank of Ghana, just release money into the system. Whenever the government writes a check, don't bounce it. Whether there's money or not, pay. You just mess up the economy some more. And you're going to get into inflation, hyperinflation. I'm sure Prof will tell us that. So the bottom line, Ghana, is that don't believe these politicians when they come with promises that that are more than the promises in the Bible. That one is God delivering. These guys are not God. Allah says you're not God, right?
For God, all his promises are yes.
And for the politician,
but nay and no, what's the opposite of amen? Let it not be. Now, so we must pay our way, ladies and gentlemen. If you like free SHS, somebody's got to pay for the free. Now, I'm sorry, if you elect President Nana Akufo-Addo as president, he's not going to finance the country from his pocket. He can't. So he must find the money. Now, we must pay our way. So the easier and probably lazier way is indirect taxes, consumption taxes. You can tax sales, spend, sin, sweetness. You can tax sin. They tax cigarettes, they tax booze.
At one point, we tax condoms. They removed them very quickly.
Now the new wave is to tax sweetness, sugar. And so if you are seeing a lot of Coke Zero on the market, it's not because the manufacturer has suddenly become health conscious. They are paying a lot of taxes on sugar. And so now they are going the zero sugar route. But we, at the end of the day, so we tax value added. And that is actually a tax on process. We tax petroleum. Look at your petroleum price build. If you look at it, we actually have taxes on taxes. We tax and then tax on the tax and tax on the tax because the government must raise the money to finance your free education, to finance the 1D, 1F. Whatever they said they're going to do, you got to pay for it. Now, but all of that is still not enough. We must tax communication. I believe it. I believe in one thing. If it moves, tax it. If it dies, tax it some more. I believe that Ghana, seriously, I'm a tax person. I believe, look, if you've been to the US and you bought a phone card, right? See your bill and see the taxes. As you move between states with the same phone number, taxes change. So the actual bill cost of the phone and the data is really low. A great chunk of it, 3% here, 5% here, 7.5% there. They build taxes to build their nation. So when you're driving on that nice bridge, somebody's taxes paid for it. But we want to sit in Ghana and not pay the taxes and expect that the person whose citizens pay tax will bring their tax money to give us aid. Look, donor fatigue has caught on. I'm telling you something. Ghana beyond aid is not just an aspiration. It's a reality because the aid ain't coming. Right? We must face the reality. The time when they just used to pump money to us every year is gone. And now that nations are beginning to think about themselves first, now that they have immigration problems that they have to deal with, there's very little money to write a check to Ghana every year. And after 60 years, if we must still get a check every year as aid, you don't deserve to be independent. But let's continue. So It must come from income taxes, Ghana. We got to pay our way.
But how many of us are in the sector where
we are getting there. There are 30 million people. Not everybody is working. But the people who pay income tax are less than 2 million.
Yeah. 1.5 we are told.
1.5, actually 1.3, more like 1.3. Okay. We can't divide Ghana into income taxpayers and non-income taxpayers. That would have been great. So income taxpayers will go sit will be in a portion of Ghana where income taxes are used, and those who don't pay income taxes will be in the rest. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So we must get back to the thing we have been saying, expanding the tax base. Whilst in grad school, my prof was helping Sierra Leone write their new income tax laws. And one of the things he recommended, I don't claim to have been part of it, I just read it. I was a student and his research assistant, is that look at the cars people drive. He went to Sierra Leone and came back and said they can't drive those cars if they are not making a certain level of income. So there's what they call deemed taxes, where the revenue authority will send you, bomb. We think this is how much you earn a month, come and pay. It is high. If you pay, you are in the system. If you don't pay, you have to come and negotiate and now show that you haven't earned it. Once they get your details, you are in the system. You get taxed every year. Now that involves a lot of work.
Yeah.
That involves, now because a good income tax system is data-based. Who is earning what, where, how much, before we get to who is spending what. Where's the database?
You don't have it.
NIA. We should stop everything and do national identification. And I'm amazed that it's sort of gone off the boil, and people have to line up to give you their data. Really? I think that we need to get to a stage where it's if I have 100 people in my firm, it should be possible to call NIA that come and register all of us. Instead of NIA say no, we have a place 2 miles, a center 2 miles away, so everybody should go and line up. I don't have your time. You need my data to tax me. Come for it. We need the identification because that will tell us who is where, doing what. Then that information goes to IRS or the GRA, and they can begin to send out tax assessments. We need a more rigid system of tax auditing. My firm has been in existence for 25 years. Our first ever tax audit was a couple of months back.
I see.
First ever was a couple of months back. Don't ask me what the results were. Actually, I'll tell you. I can guess. Actually, I'll tell you, we got a lot of recommendations. But I can see recent attempts to do this.
Yeah.
Because nobody loves to pay taxes. They say there are two things that are certain in the world, taxes and death. Nobody likes to pay taxes. And if I can arrange my affairs to pay less taxes and you won't come for it, I won't pay. No. I can see attempts. For example, one of the biggest problems in the courts right now is that some judges are insisting that if you file your court processes without proof of your tax status, your case is dismissed.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that some judges are, so there's some confusion because there are 2 or 3 different reasonings. Some agree, some do not agree. But until we get to the place where you can't call an Uber without your tax clearance certificate number, where you can't do business without that, we are kidding. And so if we have this huge gap, somebody's got to fill it. That is where the loans come in.
Yeah.
And I see the play. I read everything the NDC had to say about it, read everything the NPP had to say, and I went to read Bloomberg.
Yeah, I read the Bloomberg. Yeah.
That gives me the balance.
The reality.
The reality that we are looking at it in dollar terms now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because the city terms will look very huge.
Yes.
But if you tell me the thing in dollars, I can do the math. And so I have a fair idea where we are.
Because you know the exchange rate.
I know the exchange rate. Is it an imprisonment or unimprisonment?
Maths don't lie.
So Evans, we have to admit, and I believe that we produce enough to finance our economy. We just are unable to tax it well.
So you agree with the NPP in opposition when they say we do have enough?
But the enough isn't sitting with government.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, we always think that government is this Santa Claus, Father Christmas. It is work. The money is sitting with you and I.
Okay.
We must pay our way. We must pay the taxes. So let's demonstrate for the new road. Let me get on the platforms and shout for corruption to go down. But we have to pay our way, right? Look, my view, nobody should benefit from free SHS who is not an income taxpayer. Before your kid is admitted into free SHS, show your tax clearance certificate.
That is a very controversial suggestion.
Yeah, but then forget it.
because that will cut out almost everybody else's.
No, all we are saying is pay your taxes. Maybe you actually have a zero tax rate.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to pay taxes. Maybe when you declare your income, you actually need support. But at least let's have that data.
But what would that mean for my mother at Kanishi, for example, who?
So look, we must digitize this thing. We must streamline it. You've been in America. When it's time for filing tax returns, everybody's running around. The illiterate file tax return. You file your returns to show that you have not made any income.
Yeah.
Then you get a tax clearance certificate.
Okay.
Then your kid goes to school. But it might be that your mother at Kanishi is actually earning more than you. You might never know. But when you file the tax returns, because look, if they come after you on rent income, whatever income. Recently, I got a phone call. Of course, I was a bit miffed by it. A private number summoning me to appear at some revenue office to check rent income on some property. I said, no, write to me. I don't know who you are. You can't just ask me to show up at any place in Accra right now in this current situation and I'll get up and come. Well, you got my details from the developer. Write a letter to me. I will come and sit down with you, show you the agreement, and show you whether or not I have paid. But I'm not going to get up and drive to some part of Accra because so I objected to that situation. But it's a good indication that maybe government is beginning to gradually realize that you can't fund anything if your people are not paying for it. Ghana, there's no free lunch anywhere anymore. Look, free SHS, somebody's got to pay for it. But let's be right, there's no free SHS.
Let me bring in the former finance minister, Sir Tekwe, who is on the line with us. Hello, Mr. Tekwe.
Yeah, hello, Ivan.
Thank you for joining us. I get the sense, listening to Professor Bokwing and Ace, that this is a purely national issue and must be treated without politics, because regardless of whether you are NDC or MPP, the fundamentals are the same, and we will have to borrow until we address the rigidities I think you talked about. So why is it that in the last 1 week there's been an attempt, many say, for this very important national issue to be politicized with 80 billion here, not 80 billion there? How do you explain that in the context of what the reality says on the ground and what governments, including what you headed at the finance ministry, had failed to do in terms of addressing these challenges that has made it possible for us to be borrowing unsustainably?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners and to the host. And I must apologize for not being in the studio. I was invited, but rather late. Let me start on a very brief political note, and I promise you I will speak to numbers and facts. It is the first time in our fiscal history, in our economic history, that a prospective government stated emphatically that they were not going to borrow. It had never happened before. And I think this is very, very important because a leveraging is taking place. Yeah. And we could have responded also by saying we are also not going to borrow.
Mr. Tekwe,
it was feasible. Excuse me. Let me.
Just on a bit of just a second on the question of they say they'll never borrow. I've heard people say that. I've been researching myself. I haven't found it. If you can point to say an event or a pronouncement made, some specific, just to guide the conversation. So we are very specific.
No, when you say that we have the resources, to implement our policies and our programs, and you add, secondarily, we are not going to borrow, it means that you are making a promise not to borrow. But let me just state that, and it is there. I think you can go to various audios, and it is quite clear.
So that is an interpretation, not a categorical statement that they have made.
If I may, the point I'm making is that there's a leveraging taking place. Whether or not somebody said we'll borrow or not, the nation knows that we cannot embark on development projects in particular without borrowing. And this is very important. The reason being that even if you have the means to pay your debt, you borrow and then you pay your debt. You borrow to fast-track development. And the countries that have budget surpluses, including the advanced countries, go to the capital market to borrow. The middle-income countries with oil and vast amounts of resources go to the capital markets to borrow. And let me just compare it to a household. The fact that you have enough income and you can build a house if you were to wait for 10 years, does not mean that you must be buying building materials for 10 years before you build. You can borrow because you have the wherewithal, build your house, and that's why we talk about the need for effective mortgages. So whether it's a household, whether it's a business or a government, the three key players in an economy, borrowing is a fact of life. But when you borrow, you must learn to pay down your debt. And this is where I come from. If you have the debt management report with you, and it is true what Professor Bokin said, at page 29 of that report, and also at page 50 or so of the 2019 budget, you will see a graph that shows that the rate at which we were accumulating debt started going down between 2013 and 2014. The debt management report at page 29 starts from 2014, and therefore, if you go back to 2012, it will see that it goes up first and then it started going down. On that page, you will see, and it's on the website, it's a debt management report. From 2017, the rate at which we are accumulating debt has started going up again. I'm emphasizing this point to show that we can, as a nation, manage our debt. And let me state, Professor Bokley mentioned TPIC. This is the first time that the rate at which we were accumulating debt from 2006, to be precise, started going down. It was only in 2013. And this is the result of we saying that we have additional revenue in the form of oil. Let us use part of that oil revenue to address the issue of debt. So we set up a sinking fund, if you remember. We also said that if we are going to embark on commercial projects like Terminal 3, let the project pay for itself. Don't put it on public debt. Now, I want to restrict myself to just these two instruments. What was the outcome? Because of the sinking fund that we set up, and even when crude oil prices were going down, between 2015 and 2016, we were able to use $336 million of our own oil revenue to start paying down the 2007 sovereign bonds that we took. Why did we have to do that? We had to do that because from 2014, we envisaged that the debts will have to be retired in 2017. And therefore, we have to start paying it down. We had need to use that oil revenue for consumption. We had need to use that oil revenue we're putting in the sinking fund for other purposes, after cutting the stabilization fund. Therefore, and that is the reason why you are seeing a reduction, you started seeing a reduction in the rate at which we were accumulating debt. That is because, together with refinancing, you were addressing the issue of debt, not just deficit. You were addressing and saying, we want to start paying down debt. This is key. That we want our projects, which is not new, I always emphasize. Akosomo Dam paid for itself. Tema Harbour paid for itself from the First Republic. The notion that we got reserves from the British after independence to build those infrastructure is false.
True.
The records are there in Bank of Ghana to verify. And so we went back to that tradition. Now,
and all those
why,
internally generated.
as we speak now, we have, even though money is accumulating in the sinking fund, and the sinking fund is depleting, we have not done any redemption. And let me add that we left $200 million in the sinking fund, and October 4th, 2017, that money was used to retire the remainder of the first sovereign bond that Ghana issued. We have since added to those sovereign bonds. We have to ask ourselves, have we taken any of those bonds off the market? Have we paid them off? Yes, we may have done liability management. All the terms which have been mentioned, we initiated them. Liability management, soft amortization. By the time we were leaving office, we calculated that our annual rate of debt accumulation on the bonds in particular will be about 333 million, and with one oil field, we will be able to generate 300 million from the sinking fund to pay down our debt. So, gentlemen, the point I'm making is planning to pay down the debt. And we were talking about these issues. Now, when the government came, of course, we reduced taxes, we expanded expenditure. And we said, I in particular said that free SHS, for example, that ACE is saying, it's not fiscally sustainable because someone has to pay for it. And if you are reducing debt and doing other things, you definitely, of course, the NDC also promised progressively free education, right? But, I'm bringing this up because this is a debate that we have to have dispassionately. And I always cite the example of President Trump saying, I will build a wall. And because he cannot identify the resources for building the wall, it has become a big political issue.
And Mr. Tekwe,
because the law says that you have to look for it.
Just on the point, because I need to wrap up on this. Just on the point you made about discussing this dispassionately, I think it has been identified, and you agree, that there are fundamental issues with the economy that needs to change if we have to fix this problem with the debt that becomes unsustainable in the future. What are your quick points in solutions, I guess, that you can offer, having been there before, that can help deal with this?
I'm not going to theorize. Let me mention what we put in place. We put in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. The prime example is Terminal 3 for commercial projects. And the airport tax together with the oil revenue was to pay for the loan. As I said, we put in place a sinking fund, which was to make sure that when we borrow, we can also, pay for it. We put in place the stabilization fund from the PRMA, and we used 250 million Ghana cedis to reduce, the rate at which we would borrow in 2015 when crude oil started prices going down. We have implemented measures which, to the credit of the current administration, are continuing. Soft amortization, liability management, refinancing. These were all issues which were in our homegrown policy from 2013 to 2014.
Okay.
I think it's to the credit that we have not dismantled these measures as we used to do in the past, and they are being, implemented. So my point is that if we have stopped putting money into the sinking fund, if we have stopped putting money into the infrastructure fund, these are the structures which other countries put in place.
Okay.
They are not new to Ghana. I'm grateful
for the suggestions you've made, Sir Tekwe. I want to come to you, Suhini, on just a point that where he left off. He mentioned some of the initiatives that he introduced, but it's still a fact that in spite of all the initiatives that he mentioned, we still didn't achieve a lot of the targets under the IMF program by the time that you were leaving office. In fact, we have missed a lot of the targets. And that shows that some of the measures that he had just laid out didn't actually work the way we had anticipated it would. My question then is, if we agree, and the facts really are there, the IMF program tells us some of these facts you can't really argue with, we need to do even more. And I'm coming to the politics of this, because from Ace and Prof, you realize this, you can play politics with it all you want. It's about lives, and it's not changing unless we really agree that we have to do something really substantive about it. Yes, the government in the past had said, borrowing unsustainably can pose economic challenges. What for you when you're in Parliament? And so you approve the monies that we spend all the time. In fact, Kojo Ponkuma made the point that everything that we spent, everything that we've borrowed has come through Parliament. So what is your role, I guess? Is the question. I want to drive more of the solution, because the politics, as we've heard, whether you're NDC or MPP, you face the thing, the reality will hit you, and you realize that you really can't do anything about it until you fix the challenge. What do you feel your role is as a member of Parliament to address this particular challenge? Because you scrutinize what we spend.
Thank you, Evans. Good morning to my colleagues on the panel, and good morning to our viewers. especially to the very good people of the Tamale North constituency.
Predictable.
Yes. Because it's predictable. Of course. Because it's predictable. Because it's predictable. If I didn't, it would have been an issue.
You'll have to.
Anyway, but I agree with your point about the IMF targets and how policies that were put in place at the time that we were leaving office had not started, yielding fruits. But it is important to make the point that every intervention has a maturity period. So if you introduce an intervention in 2016, you do not expect it to lead to the meeting of targets in that same year sometimes. So it is not correct to assume that those policies are not the reasons why the targets may have been met in 2017. Like Mr. Setepe says, to the credit of this government, some of those interventions have not been dismantled and they are still working with it. So it's important that we state that. Then again, you talk about the politics. And that is where sometimes I find it incredulous. Evans, politics for me is about the competition of ideas to govern a country better. Ideas. And so in that competition, it is expected that the citizens will choose the idea that they think can best serve the interests of the country. And so I get fascinated sometimes when in one era, discussions are conducted without cautions of politicization, and in another era, you have loud cautions about the need to have the discussions without politicizing it. Because this is not the first time, really, that we are discussing the economy. This is not the first time we are discussing debt and borrowing. We did that in the previous government, under the previous government, without these so-called cautions that let's not politicize it. Because the politicians were deeply involved in the discussion. In fact, they were leading the discussion. And nobody at that time really made an issue about discussing it within a political context, because it was about the competition of ideas. So you had Dr. Bawumia at the time, who was the running mate of the opposition, in fact, leading the discussions on debts and borrowing. Nobody said he was doing politics. So I get fascinated when the caution these days is, let's be careful, let's be dispassionate, let's not play the politics. I don't think we are being consistent.
I think Seth did. There was a lot of pushback to Bawumia.
Yeah, but
telling him not to politicize it.
Fantastic.
I
agree with you. I agree with you. So, but you see, I agree with you. But I'm saying that let those who have been consistent remain so. If you didn't say don't politicize it, don't say it now.
Oh, how?
If you said don't politicize it then, no, if you say it now, then you must admit you were wrong in the first place for not cautioning.
We can tell those who were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
Exactly. So I'm saying that if you didn't say don't politicize it when it was happening at the time, you can say, well, I was wrong then, so let's not politicize it. But if you said at the time that don't politicize it, you still can be consistent. That is all that I'm asking for. Now, in that competition of ideas that I speak about, it is important that the citizens and those of us who consider ourselves elite will listen and listen well. Because in a competition, you don't expect all the players to be fair and honest. In every competition in this world, you don't expect the competitors to always be fair and honest. And so if you are somebody who is to judge among the best, as far as a competition is concerned, you need to be mindful of the potential of people to cheat and be dishonest. So for example, I want to use the case of free SHS to illustrate this point I'm making. I first heard the GRA when it was published, or I read about it, when it was published by the Daily Graphic, that if you didn't have a PIN number, you will not enjoy free SHS. I heard the Finance Minister, Honorable Ken Oforiatta, talk about the need for us to revise the way we are implementing the free SHS.
And target it a bit more.
I have listened to Ace on the platform, and he seems to also be thinking in that light. And he makes a point that, look, there is no free SHS, or there's no free SHS. That's how he put it.
Somebody has to pay for the free.
That somebody has to pay for it.
Or something has to give up.
Something has to give. Now it is important that we go back just a little to listen to our politicians before the 2016 general elections. And Evans, you will hear President Mahama say these same things. That you cannot really give this free. Something has to give. You will hear Seth Tekpe make that point at the time.
The distinction between the NDC and NPP was how fast should we achieve free?
Because of our basket at the time. That look.
Just about the speed.
No, it wasn't about the speed.
I mean, yours was progressive. We'll get there, but we can't do it now.
Yes, but the speed was determined by how much we had at the time.
Okay.
So we're looking at how much we knew as a country we could generate. And we're saying that the way you are promising to do it, you can't fund it. You remember the debate about funding, how we were going to fund it, where you were going to get the money from. And that is where the assurances were given that it will be funded in such a way that other government projects will not suffer.
And they funded.
But that is why we are discussing huge debt, you know, distress. It's one of the reasons.
Okay, good.
But
exactly. It's one of them.
Yes, it's one
not
of the
the
reasons.
reason.
So, Evans, the point I'm making is that, look, it is important that we listen well to our politicians. And I don't think it is fair when we assume that all politicians are in this game to be dishonest and to lie to the people. If you don't listen and you choose the lie, that is what you chose. You have yourself to blame. But not all politicians are in this game to be dishonest. So on this
matter of the debt, NDC has been the honest broker.
Yes. So
you have been the honest broker.
You see, I'm moving forward, Evans. I don't want to pass.
I'm just checking.
I don't want to pass the judgment. I'm getting there. I'm getting to the debt. I'm getting to the debt. I am getting to the debt, Prof. I must commend you that you set the tone very well for this discussion when you started. Now there is the issue of the debt. And how much we owe. As minority, we held a press conference. It is important for anybody who wants to analyze what we did to ask himself or herself, what did we want to achieve? In my view, we wanted to expose
the hypocrisy,
a certain dishonesty, and a certain level of cluelessness of this Dr. Bawumia and Nana Akufo-Addo government. Dishonesty, how? I heard when Honorable Seth Tekpe made reference to the pledge not to borrow, that there is really no evidence. You have checked. I have checked, Evans. December 2016, Dr. Bawumia tweeted. He tweeted, and I quote, "I worked at the Bank of Ghana, and so I know that Ghana is rich. It is because the managers of the economy are incompetent. And so all what they think of is borrowing. The MPP, if voted, will harness resources in Ghana to develop Ghana. I am telling you, we can develop Ghana without borrowing. The money is here," unquote. December 2016. That was Dr. Bawumia's tweet. So indeed, there's evidence. Now the flag bearer.
Let me see.
Oh, come on, Evans.
Well, I think we've already.
It is there. We all read it. It's been flying on social media. It's there. That's what he tweeted. So there's evidence that he said they will harness resources of Ghana to develop Ghana, and they won't borrow. The evidence is there. Then his flag bearer, the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, topped it all in the local language when he said, that the money is here. I mean, literally.
Sikakoko is gold.
Yes, I know.
But it's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, the meaning or the import of that is to collaborate what Dr. Bawumia says, that we have the resources here. Do you understand? So we should not be suffering. Okay. That was the campaign.
It's a fair criticism.
That was launched. Yes. So you see, when we hold a press conference and we highlight the fact that you said you were not going to borrow, and in less than 3 years, the debt stock has increased by about 80 billion. And part of it is as a result of your borrowing. It is to expose that dishonesty and that claim that you were not going to borrow. Then the second part of the dishonesty that we expose is the responses that you get from the NPP, especially after our press conference. It exposes a certain dishonesty about them, and I find it ridiculous that they don't find themselves ridiculous repeating facts and positions that they rejected when they were in opposition today.
Such as?
Such as exchange rate contributing to debt stock. Setekpe was on my program countless number of times explaining to Dr. Bawumia when he did a simple arithmetic of segregating debts, Ghana's debts before 08 and Ghana's debt before 2016, and concluding that the quantum that was left was borrowed by John Mahama and the NDC government. Setekpe made the point that sometimes your debt can increase without borrowing because of the exchange rate. They rejected that. And Dr. Bawumia at his lecture did that classical segregation. He just said, look, in 2008, this was our debt. In 2015, this is our debt. And so when you do a separation, it means John Mahama and the NDC borrowed this much. And they have nothing to show except what they have as, what was it called? It was ridiculed with that artist impression in their green books. That's all he said. So when we do that press conference and we play it back to him, that when we do that same mathematics and apply that same logic that you did, you have increased our debt stock by 80 billion. And you come repeating our words to us that you rejected, you are dishonest. You are exposing your dishonesty, and it is ridiculous that you don't see it. But I think the discerning Ghanaian sees through that. And that is, and then the cluelessness, Evans. The cluelessness again is in the fact that the government doesn't appreciate its own lectures. Because at the time, even those of them who agreed to some extent with Setekpe that the exchange rate could contribute to, the increment in debt, told him it was his responsibility to manage the exchange rate. And so it was not an excuse to say you haven't borrowed but it has increased. Then manage the exchange rate and it will drop. So it's when you tell us today that is the exchange rate, you are telling us you are incompetent, you are clueless. Just like you argued. Do you understand the point I'm making?
So you has a point.
Then the point again that should not be lost on all of us. Apart from the borrowing, we are saying, and it is common knowledge to everybody, that he who gets more, more is expected of you.
Which was Bawumia's point, actually.
Which was his point again, and we agree with him. So we are saying in less than 3 years, the resources, even if you exclude the 80 billion that has come to the government, far exceeds the resources that the previous government got in 4 years.
Especially in oil.
You're talking about tax revenue, which has increased to about 113.5 billion. You're talking about oil revenue, which has almost tripled to about 12.3 billion. And you're talking about grants to about 3.7 billion. And we are saying, where is the money? What are you using it for? Because by our own tabulation from the budget statements that you have presented to Parliament, we see that even the free SHS that you talk about, less than 3 billion has gone into that. Capital expenditure, less than 5 billion has gone into that by your own budget statement.
So it is not the free SHS that's causing the debt stock.
Yeah. So the point, so that is why we're asking, where is the money?
In fact, if you look at the monetary...
Where is the money?
If you look at the monetary...
No, Prof was just saying that to me.
Yes.
Actually, it's not free SHS.
But
So we can't blame free SHS.
Yes, but you see, the information minister at his response, I mean, at the press conference where he responded, cited, when we were asking to show us what they have done with their money. And many of their communicators do that on platforms. They mention 3 years ago.
A huge chunk of that.
I think a good way to look at that is that revenues have increased, but expenditure have also increased.
Exactly. And the expenditure is consumption.
So I'm coming. So,
do you understand?
So it's not entirely complete to only criticize on the size of the fact we've received more revenue.
Yeah.
Our legitimate expenditures have also
gone
increased. But you see, in all these things, we have talked about the fact that we listened to the NPP when they were in opposition. That was how I started.
Yeah, that's why I
and
said
we also listened to the NDC.
And you actually say you are disappointed because some of the things they said, they haven't been able to.
And we also listened to the NDC when they were in government. The defense they offered is as though the marking scheme sits somewhere. If you are in opposition, you go and pick it. If you are in government, you go and what?
No,
I'm coming.
Prof, you can. No, I beg you, because it's within my time. I just can say that. It is not about the marking scheme sitting somewhere and we running after it. At least you can consider what the NDC now is doing as seeking vindication. We are seeking vindication. We are forcing the government to admit to some of the truths that they reject.
So Kweku, now the NDC has a point. I want to read you some things that Bawumia said in opposition, and this is one of his lectures, quote, and it's on my journal line, and just to be very specific. This was in 19th November 2014. He said, and this is on the question of the debt. He says, NDC inherited a public debt stock of 9.5 billion cedis in 2009. Then it goes on. Today, Ghana's debt has gone up to 65.7 billion cedis. So when I say when I say the stakes are high, I'm talking about the destiny of our country, Ghana, the future of the youth. Then he goes on to conclude, the NDC has been taxing everything, including condoms and cutlasses. In terms of resources, this NDC government has had more resources than any other government. We did not have oil, yet Ghanaians know what we did with the limited resources we had. We spent money responsibly to create the NHS, introduce capitation grant, expand access to education. We spent wisely on infrastructure and built more roads than any other government. And so that is him arguing that, the NDC were borrowing and not showing any results, and they were borrowing unsustainably and jeopardizing our future.
Have you checked
so they have a point, don't they?
They have a point within context. But have you checked what the NDC were saying when they were in opposition before 2008 elections? Have you checked that one too?
No.
Why are we starting from when NDC was in government prior to 2016 and what Bawumia and the opposition were saying? Check what running mate John Mahama said relative to the issues we are discussing. In fact, he brought to the fore and made the point that Kufuor's administration for 8 years had borrowed 50%, according to him, of the 10.4 billion that Ghana had inherited as debt from independence. It turned out to be false, though. When the checks were made properly, it was false, and I have the publications here. But that is when this whole thing came to the fore in terms of the Fourth Republic. Admittedly, if you read the Hansard, the issue of debate over debt is not new. Rawlings suffered examples of it. Indeed, yes, but that is why I said put in context. Indeed, one of the reasons for the overthrow of the Lima administration, and it's in Rawlings' speech, was that he was increasing Ghana's debt, running around the world and borrowing by heart. Even Nkrumah suffered it. By the time of the 16th coup, Ankra's first speech, one of the reasons given for the coup was the debt profile of Ghana. It's true. So we have been playing this game relative to the debt for a long, long time. So please, nobody should come and restrict it to Bawumia 2016 election campaign. If you want to be factual and constructive and honest and sincere, let's look at it in the global context. And there we will see the wisdom Prof was pushing to the fore about depoliticizing, demystification, and indeed, I will add depersonalization.
But Setekbe also pushed that.
He did,
passionately.
Because he is an economist. He is a professional.
Yes.
And in fact, I was happy he debunked the other fallacy about Nkrumah inherited so much money and that it was wasted. That debt reserves we talk about were internally generated. Indeed, J.H. Mason had a very nice publication. The British government owed Ghana at one stage. They owed this country. So if we are going to be fair and honest, let's look at it in a global sense. And then when we start doing that, we'll be able to deal with the issues one by one. Look, it's a legitimate concern, an issue to raise, that you borrowed this much money. What have you spent it on? Expended it on? I have no problems with it. And it will be required of a government or an administration to itemize, tell you the things they've done with it. I hear my NDC friends cite Rich Hospital, Legon University, Kwame Nkrumah Interchange, Kaswa Interchange. Put all those things together, it's about 4 billion or 5. The flagship projects.
Yeah.
How much had they borrowed? Prof, if you can give me about 20 something.
Yeah.
Take the 4 out of the 27. Where is the rest of the money? Same question being asked.
But the quantums differ.
It doesn't matter. No, I'm talking percentage. It doesn't matter. I wasn't contesting the two figures. I am saying that what the flagship projects you put out, because you are asking MPP, show us. And you are talking about, you want infrastructure. You are not talking consumption. That's what you are saying. I'm saying that even within the context of the monies you borrowed, those flagship projects that you point to, if you put all together, there's still a lot more money out there. Where is it? I'm not saying anybody has chopped it. Indeed, I don't think anybody has chopped that money. It's a propagandist interpretation, which they do on the political platform at rallies. It's easy to do those things. You play on the keyboards of people's emotions. All of them do it. And as I'm saying, it's been done since 1966. In fact, before, but it got pronounced post-66. And we've used it against each administration anytime just for political propaganda, capital purposes. That's what we've been doing. When I walked into the studio here, I told you that some of us ought not to be here discussing this matter, that you should bring the experts. And I meant it. Yeah. Because if you have to interrogate this thing properly, seriously, in the national interest, it's not people like us you bring here, minus Prof. And excuse me, I added you. But that's a fact. Yeah. No, so to be honest, be honest with you. Let's let the experts take time and interrogate these issues. Not necessarily the issue of quantum of how much you've borrowed and things, but how have we applied it? Money. And going forward, how we can minimize borrowing. Unsustainable borrowing. I would end up saying that I never heard Bawumia say we will never borrow. And I insist on that.
You are not on Twitter, maybe that's why.
No, but that's not exactly what he said. You've admitted it's your interpretation of what he said.
Yes,
that's it. You want me to read the tweet again? He said we will not borrow. You want me to read the tweet again?
Please read it.
Yes, it says, the MPP voted will harness resources in Ghana to develop Ghana. I'm telling you, we can develop Ghana without borrowing.
Yeah, they said we can develop Ghana without borrowing. Yeah. So your interpretation is that he says we'll never borrow.
I have not, there's no Ghanaian leader. There is no Ghanaian leader that I haven't heard say that the emphasis should be on internal mobilization, a vision. That Ghana beyond aid, the vision. It doesn't mean you are not going to borrow. It doesn't mean we are not going to have support from aid. What it means is that we are looking at a situation where we increasingly mobilize more resources internally as opposed to externally. But really, nobody is suggesting for a moment that you will never ever borrow. I didn't hear Bawumia say that.
But if it's true,
if you say it's an interpretation, you are entitled.
No, but if it's true that what he's reading, and I must say, I didn't see the tweet.
It's not Chinese.
So I can independently confirm it. But if it's true that Bawumia said we will develop without borrowing, then that raises.
It's a bit of extreme.
Yeah.
In the face of what.
If indeed he sent a tweet like that.
That is why Pepe was saying that this was historical.
First of all, I see a lot. Well, I'm not. It's true. I don't know about just tweets and things. That's a fact. I have to be honest with you. I'm a BBC, you know. Yes, so I don't know about it. Yeah. But to be honest with you, it would have been a huge surprise if Bawumia indeed meant that Ghana would develop without borrowing. I have my doubts. this tweet at this stage, I think, is of doubtful validity.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
Oh,
but I wanted to make a quick point.
Brief, yeah,
I'm not one for throwing.
A minute each.
I'm not one for throwing appointments at problems. But there must be some wisdom in why, since 1927, Canada has had a Minister of National Revenue.
Okay.
On cabinet. They have a finance minister, but they have a Minister of National Revenue. I know we have a kind of structure where one of the deputy ministers is in charge of revenue issues. Maybe for somebody who has direct access to the president, accounting to the president literally on a monthly basis on what we are doing in respect of collecting taxes. Without collecting the taxes, Evans, a decade from today, our children will be on this program.
True, talking about
the same thing, and we would have failed. We need to put that issue on a higher national pedestal. We have to accept as a people that we have to pay our way.
Prof, and just on that, the World Bank country director agrees with what Asa just said. And in the recent interview, as he exited, he said Ghana is at the risk of high debt distress, primarily because of domestic revenue mobilization being very weak. And we consistently over the years have missed the revenue targets.
Thank you very much, Evans.
Very briefly though, 1 minute.
You know, I started my presentation by giving you the historical perspective. So we understand that we have come a long way, perhaps enough of the politics. Look, I said one basic function of the state is to collect taxes. Any country that is unable to collect sufficient taxes and wants to develop in the face of all of that will end up in a debt trap. It's as simple as that. So, and I also see we have talked about various measures about expanding the tax net. I hope there's any net left to be expanded.
Because we've expanded for decades now.
We talked about perhaps focus a little bit more on compliance. Why we have not been able to deliver on this,
it beats you.
He knows it's political.
Yeah, so I told you about
you don't want to do it.
And the thing you said that's was the simple one about exemptions.
Exemptions.
We can't do.
We can do. And you see, and it's going to get more terrible. The reason I fear for Ghana is also because of the 2020 elections.
Yeah. We all are holding our breath.
Yeah.
So, because, you know, and government drive to enforce greater tax compliance is affected negatively every elections because they don't. It's a numbers game. So, and that is where in a competitive election era we tend to borrow a little bit more because the expectations are also high and all of that.
Okay, just final question and do this briefly for me. The question about all the monies we borrow, what have we spent it on? NDC says it's gone into consumption. What do you see as an expert?
So you see, there's a way to evaluate the efficiency of that and the various investments that we have made with those funds and all of that. Okay, so to say it's as a result of corruption or something, I think that would be too extreme. I think the problem also is that as a country, we haven't been efficient when it comes to our public investments. Contract overvaluation, project delays and all of that. Explain why we have a debt stock that perhaps cannot be sustained by underlying real assets as a country. Look, any government that is not doing serious project infrastructure is also not making money for itself because it's one of the surest ways politicians accommodate their corrupt drive. If it's supposed to cost 10,
Prof, it depends. I could challenge.
We are wrapping up. We're wrapping up. But let Prof wrap up and let's change.
But studies have shown the level of.
There are a lot of financial engineering these days that can.
Something can do for me briefly.
A lot of cash around, without necessarily.
Prof, something can do for me briefly. If
as a country, so
5 big areas where the monies have gone, which will you name?
So we can talk about maybe roads, we can talk about other things, other critical infrastructure. But when you also see that the bulk of the borrowing also is more like liability management.
We are borrowing to service the debt.
So when you see from the budget in terms of capital spending, look, to be very honest with you, we are running down our assets. We are unable to maintain them. We are unable to enhance our asset base to ease the restrictions on the growth drivers of the economy. The reason over the years the non-oil real sector has not delivered is as a result of the lack of proper investment, capital spending.
Okay.
To engineer growth from the non-oil real sector.
Okay, Prof, thank you very much. I think your input has been really, really great. 1 minute.
Just 1 minute. I agree with Prof to some extent. I was reading something on the development communication, and the point was made that the easiest way to, make a government that makes infrastructure one of its main, project lines is to target with corruption. And that is in communication.
Yeah, because mostly we are not transparent when it comes to many of those things.
Sorry. So I agree with, but that is with communication. But I'm just saying that in this day and era, a lot of financial engineering can happen through consumption that makes that can pass for corruption. But when I agree again with Agro-Kweki when he talks about the 2008 elections and how it was fought. But then again, if we want to be honest, the NDC has never really had a problem with debts. Really? We have always looked at it. Please, I agree with him on the things that please, I agree with you on the things that you said. Okay. But you see, in response to that, I'm saying that before the 2000 elections, you had the OPPP talk. So when you found the NDC in 2008 making an issue out of that, it was in response to that 2000 election. But I'm saying the NDC like Nkrumah.
Thank you very much.
Please, the NDC like Nkrumah will leave that. The NDC like Dr. Nkrumah.
Thank you, Suhini. Thank you, Suhini. I'm grateful. Grateful. We are going to shuffle the pack for our next conversation shortly, which will be on the University of Ghana controversial survey. Suhini. Sorry. Yes, Prof. Okay. I want to read a few messages that I've received on this. Professor Peter Korte, who has been listening, says, I've been listening to the program and enjoying the discussion. However, I think we can do justice to this topic if we got disaggregated data on the debt profile. That is debt in US dollars, new loans, how much financing, details on projects financed through the loans, how much has gone into consumption. On the question of where the money has gone, there's a view that says that you simply have to go to Parliament because that's where all the approvals are done, and that the NDC should simply check what they've proved, because if you want to check where the money has gone, Parliament would have approved every single one of them.
By the Parliament, you can see, how much was taken for what, but how much has been disbursed for what purpose? Okay. It may not be there.
Which period? Lawyer Yalpon, who's listening, also says his non-expert view on the controversy over how much we've owed is that let's make a public announcement to the whole world that anyone who thinks we are owing them must write to us and inform us of our total indebtedness to them.
That would be a lot of work, right? Someone has to aggregate to them. No. He's talking like a lawyer. If somebody dies,
we'll move into the very controversial research done by the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Why the MPs are upset with the Political Science Department? You are live on Newsfile. It's on Joy 99.7 FM, also on the Joynews channel on Multi TV. Keep your messages coming. I'll share it with the rest of the world. And on a quick point, just been sent a message from the Vice President's office, by the way, Suhini, on the matter that you quoted from Twitter. The Vice President's office says that the Twitter account is fake.
Oh, goodness.
And does not belong to the VIP. He says he never made any such statement. So that is the position from the office of the Vice President.
Is that dishonesty at that level?
But that's a position. I'm just
reading. Subject to verification.
They said the said Twitter. I'm just reading. The said Twitter account is fake and does not belong to the VIP. We never made any such statement. That's from the Vice President's office on a question of whether he said they would develop Ghana without borrowing. Okay, so. There's a very controversial subject that emerged, and for the very first time, I haven't had that before. The University of Ghana was pitched quite firmly against the entire Parliament. There was a whole debate on the research that they've done, and the Speaker himself was upset. about it. So what did they actually do that really upset the members of parliament? And I'm sure you have followed the discussion throughout the week about the survey they did about the performance of members of parliament. And it found some of the controversial findings. 49.5% of Ghanaians will vote out their members of parliament. Also found the majority of respondents, representing 46.7%, do not want their incumbent MPs to contest in the 2020 general elections, while 42.4% want their MPs to contest, with 10.9% still undecided. That's even a huge number there to interrogate. I mean, both the MPP and the NDC, across board really, their MPs weren't performing as well as the constituents would expect, and therefore there is a sense that if we vote today, we're probably going to lose like 180 of the incumbent MPs. That is a shocking figure, and no wonder the members of parliament were very upset with it. We're going to have that discussion. I've just been joined by one of the researchers from the University of Ghana Political Science Department, Alex Keche Frempong. I'm grateful that you could join us on this conversation. Apart from Odikro, that does purely MPs, it assesses the MPs' attendance and their level of contribution. We haven't had any research like this that goes to the constituencies, and your sample size was huge, 27,000 plus. 500. That's huge. From every, you selected 5 electoral areas from
20 respondents.
Okay, let's start from there because your methodology has been questioned. The speaker says they question your methodology. So tell us what your methodology was. How did you arrive at these figures?
Thank you, Evans. I'm pleased to be here since election day 2016.
Yes.
And let me make 1 or 2 clarifications before I come to my methodology.
Okay.
The very first one is that this research is not the whole of political science projects. In previous times, we had all had projects which was for the department. But this one is by a team of lecturers in the department with the support of Conrad Andrew Foundation, who have been doing this. We did it 2016 before the election. We have looked at Akufo-Addo's first year, and we have looked at the second year. So this is about the 4th that we are doing. Let me also say that we know the roles of MPs. We know that MPs have a lot of things to do as lawmakers. They have deliberative functions on all national issues. They have oversight issues. They control the purse and all that. And this, they do both at the committee level and the plenaries. I can even extend it to say that they have even international responsibilities now in ECOWAS and Africa Parliament. But I also think nobody would deny that they don't have constituency functions as our representatives. You just mentioned Odikru had focused on their work in Parliament. Yeah. And we decided to look at their work in their constituencies. Okay. So the focus of our work was what the voters say about the constituency functions of MPs. So we were just looking at that aspect and not all functions of the MP. We have to be clear about that. Then on the methodology, we thought through and said, if you do it for a few constituencies.
But just for clarity on the first one.
Yes.
So you're looking at what the MP's function is in the constituency. Purely from the point of view of their constituents.
Exactly.
It was an opinion poll.
Opinion poll, yes.
Asking them their opinions of
how far their MPs have performed over the 2.5 years.
Okay. So to some extent, the people themselves set their own parameters. I mean, so what they tell you is what you report.
Exactly.
Okay. So
we are not putting anything apart from what they said.
So that's an important clarity. What they tell you is what they told you is what you've reported.
All that we did is to calculate the percentages and so on of what they said.
Okay.
On the methodology, all the 275 We sent people to all of them. We took 5 electoral areas in each constituency, except I think 2 constituencies in Accra, which has less than 5. And in choosing the electoral areas, we went picking from the hat. We list the name of all the electoral areas and pick 5 of them. And in each...
Which is the proper research method, by the way. For those of you who think, how can you be choosing from the hat? How is that? It's a process that is used in research.
It's good on another platform. People were saying, maybe you pick from my enemy area and all that.
Yeah.
We didn't want to bring all those controversies.
But this is random.
So we did this one randomly. Yeah. So it could be your stronghold also. That was what we did. And for each of them, 20 respondents, each electoral area. So 100 for each constituency. And when they got there, we asked them to interview every 5th household.
Okay.
So that you don't just sit in one household and do that. So that is was the methodology we went through, and I think it's as scientific as possible. When we come to the...
What was the margin of error?
I can't tell you quickly. Osman should have told me that.
Okay. Because that's important.
Yes.
Judging how our research is. Okay. So it would be good that if the doctors listening to send you a note. So
that will clarify that.
Yes.
So if you look at the demographics, it's male, female, 53.5, 46.5. You assume, why do we have more females, but it's like this? But we all know that if you go to any house, the woman will tell you, wait for my husband. So to get 53% male and 46 it's not too bad. And in other areas, age, religion, and so on, they actually match with the national statistics. In terms of educational background, 19% say they have never been to school. And we have all the others, right down to about 5.6 for those who have university degrees. There also, somebody has suggested we should have interviewed enlightened people, and we were wondering what that meant. So in brief, this was the methodology.
So you had the members of parliament this week. The Speaker of Parliament says, what you measured is not what the MPs do. In fact, he suggested, and he demanded, in fact, the minority leader even suggested there's a committee that should be formed to work with you in agreeing on what to measure, and that you should measure what the Constitution say they do. And that what you did was inciting the public against the constituents, going to measure things like development, and when they don't do that. What's your reaction to that?
I'm wondering whether constituency services is not one of the core duties of a representative.
But does that include development?
And what we did here is about constituency services. And you agree with me that the MPs, as we will come to very soon, themselves promised some of these things.
True.
It is 8.7% of them who were told made promises in the course of the campaign.
This is what the constituents told you, that they had their MPs.
Yes. And they mentioned provision of water, road construction, and the rest of it. So, to tell me it is not part, they have always been saying they are not development agents and all that. So that was the reason why we wanted to ask if they were making promises and so on. We also, in the course of what the MPs did in the constituency, majority of them said they are advocates for development. So maybe they were not expecting them to do it all by themselves.
But advocate for it to be done.
Advocate for it.
And that is what the constituents told you.
Yes.
So that is interesting. So it's not true that the constituents told you that they expect their MPs to actually be building the roads, but
they should be
advocating for the roads to be done.
Yes.
Those are two different things. the impression you get from Parliament and the concerns is that, oh, but what you went to measure, we are not development agents.
And that I've told you, I don't agree.
Okay.
Because it is part of what? Constituency services.
Okay.
And if people were already developed and they don't need those specific things, then maybe they will not ask for that. But if you take our system, that is an important part of what they need. And I've already also explained that they said in the course of the campaign, they made promises. But when we asked them, what do you think is the rule? In fact, it was the first thing we asked. And they said they should be advocates for development projects before we came to promises. And they said they did make them. In the course of our present dissemination, the MPs who were there told us that, no, they didn't make those promises personally, but that was what was in their manifestos. And that if their party came to power, they were going to do those things. So our problem was that, is that how you explain it to your constituents? And I think if they had said, when our party comes to power, maybe the responses will be the same. Yeah. So if you don't communicate well with your constituents, and we don't see any problem you have in saying what your constituents said you have.
You also found that MPs, majority of them do not visit their constituency.
Yes.
Many of them haven't been there at all.
Some haven't been there at all. But there are a few who are there, monthly, 2 months, 3 months, and so on.
Yeah.
And some, like we have said before, said they haven't seen their MPs since
they won.
But in the course of the campaign, they came to their villages, however remote they were, and that sort of thing.
Sweeney, Tamale North, have you seen your bid in the survey? How did you perform? Because I know they assess individual MPs. Your constituents assess you.
They assess individual constituencies.
Constituencies, yes. And by extension, you're
the one representing.
And you performed. You scored what?
I don't think that is important. I know I didn't score badly.
You've seen it. Let's say
I've seen it.
But you didn't publish that. Did you publish that?
It's about 70%. But you see, that shouldn't. We should.
Let me clarify something. Did you publish that aspect of the individual assessment? I'm told you didn't.
No, they didn't.
They didn't.
What happened?
Yeah, but so how did the MPs? Just because he did the thing. So let me come.
I agree.
Explain that. You didn't publish that. So how did that get in the public domain? And MPs know.
I don't know. I can't tell you.
So why didn't you publish that though?
We had felt that after the dissemination and we have raised some of these issues, the MPs will come and we will give them the details.
Okay, privately.
The details of their constituencies.
Privately.
In fact, privately. The idea was that we were not going to crucify anybody.
Public.
But these are the things we have seen. And if there are 10% or 50% of people sitting on the fence, the MP come and see which electoral areas these things were happening, so that you can do your work within the next 18 or so months.
Did you get to give it to them privately?
We told them, those who were there, that they could see us for all the details. Apart from the statistical ones, we also have qualitative data and all that. So a lot of information, which, in fact, if we were going to do all that for that workshop, we wouldn't have finished. So that was what we tried to give the national averages and the regional averages. And hoping that anybody who wanted, and right there, people were asking for their own details and so on.
So how did you get yours?
Well, through my sources.
That's all.
But Evans, before I look at this matter, you read a text message earlier. I am scandalized on the denial by the Vice President office. I am scandalized that we want to, stoop.
See, you made the point. You made the point.
I think that I'm inviting.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
We can't move on. I am challenging you in the media. I'm challenging our tech geeks to settle this matter.
So that's for later.
No,
let's deal with this.
I just want to throw that challenge.
You made the point. They've come back and said that is not
indeed
there.
He said so.
So
let's look at the research. You can understand why Parliament is uncomfortable with these reports, and you can understand why the Speaker had to communicate the way he did on behalf of Parliament, because, so to speak, he's the embodiment of Parliament as we sit today. And when we see, independent intellectual work, that also has the tendency of scapegoating MPs and, for that matter, Parliament, it is important that we raise it. I mean, we work with information in the House, and so we cannot be against research as parliamentarians. But we will wish, as the Speaker communicated, that some of these reports also factor in the unique position that Parliament holds, like when Dr. Raymond Atuguba did his research on the judiciary. For the preservation of the image of the judiciary and others, it was, the report was carefully, discussed and released in such a way
was it released?
Well, it wasn't released. Thank you. It wasn't released. But it was carefully discussed.
But the problem with that is that he told us what his findings, conclusions were,
and
didn't disclose the methodology as we've seen. So it couldn't be tested against the scientific paradigm.
But you see, I'm saying there are reasons. There are reasons why some of these things, even when you carry out research, because of maybe the institution and the role it plays, you don't want to put it in a certain light.
Except because it's Parliament, and you represent us.
I agree.
Just on that point. Just on that point. Because it's Parliament, you represent us.
I feel like like a cockroach in the court of men.
I know, yes, you are.
I move on.
You are.
Thank you.
I mean, but you get the point, right?
To be fair, I get the point you are making, but allow me to make. I don't disagree with you. If I end, you realize that I don't disagree with you at all. But I am saying that it is important that we factor in the concerns that some MPs have raised, and by extension, what the Speaker has said. For example, if you are assessing, the performance of an MP in his constituency, and the outcome of the report is that the constituents want him more in his constituency, and it is released and not discussed within the context of what is expected of an MP, you'll get all MPs vacating the House of Parliament and being in their constituency. It can be done. It can be done. You see, MPs will be, because when you are not also in Parliament, Odikro and what is the name, Africa Watch, will also rate you as an absentee parliamentarian. So it is a tightrope that MPs are walking. And so we expect that some of this research will help us, walk it better, but not scapegoat us. For example, when I talk about scapegoating, when I looked through the report, there's a portion where questions are asked about whether the MP respects the district chief executive, whether the MP respects the assemblyman, whether the MP respects the chief. That, for me, sounds like an attempt to scapegoat an MP. Why don't you ask, for example, if they have cordial relationship? Is it to say that it is the MP who should respect?
But they are assessing.
Yeah, so you are assessing your work. No, but you are assessing. Once, if they say they don't have a cordial relationship, you can then do that analysis and find out who is the cause of it. Because an MP may not be respecting a DCE, and it's not his fault. But once you put the question there, the assumption of the constituents is that it is for the MP to respect the DCE. So you kind of put the MP in a very bad light, that even when he is uncomfortable with what is happening in his constituency, the constituents expect him to respect the DCE. So I'm saying some of these things can make MPs feel uncomfortable. When I see a question like that being asked about why, the question could have just been, do they have a cordial relationship? And then based on that, that is the quantitative part of it. Then if you want to go into the qualitative assessment of it, you can find out why they don't have a cordial relationship. And these are some of the things that I noticed some people had problems with. Then again, for me, like I said, I love research. I love research because, you see, research gives you a basis to act. whether you agree with it or not. It gives you a basis to act. So I am not one who, will pick a research report and just dismiss it on the basis of its findings. I will want to act to prove that the findings are wrong. Or I will want to act to prove that the findings are correct. So personally, I love research. But what I again see in this report is that the methodology was quantitative. And it
I think it's a blend of both.
No, but what was released? What was the part that you released? You said that you have the qualitative part of it, but the part that was released is quantitative. So I'm saying that in quantitative analysis, and by what I see that they have done, the constituencies were treated as homogeneous entities. But really, they are not. Every constituency has a life. It has a character. It has a culture. It has needs, which are different from the other constituencies. And maybe that is the problem with quantitative analysis. It treats all agents as if they were just, robots. So it doesn't matter if I have 5 electoral areas in my constituency and you have 60 electoral areas. If I have 5 and you come and pick 5, that's representative enough. But maybe if I have 100 electoral areas and you come and pick 5, it may not be that representative. So that is where I find a problem with the universal, determination of, the whole report. I mean, it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. Every constituency is the same. Every constituency behaves in the same manner. They all have the same needs. Their people react the same way. So the questionnaire is administered without, recourse to the fact that these constituencies differ from each other. But if he says there is a qualitative one that they have not they have not released, maybe some of these concerns can be answered in that.
It says it's available if you want it.
I'm saying maybe that can be answered in that report. Now, there was also the issue of role of an MP. And for me, it is alarming that, for example, the traditional roles of the MP that we know of, representation, and advocacy is part of representation, mind you. But really, and then, legislating. Mm-hmm. If you look at the scores for representation and legislation, it's alarming. It shows a certain lack of knowledge, which should not necessarily be blamed on the way the MPs campaign alone. It tells us that there is a general lack of knowledge as far as the expectations of the citizens is concerned when it comes to what their MPs can do for them. And that cannot be singularly blamed on how politicians campaign. Let's not make that mistake of thinking that this particular thinking that has come out of this report is squarely blamable on the way MPs campaign.
Largely blamable on the MPs.
But even if I don't want to contest that, but it is important to look at the other factors that may be contributing to this knowledge.
Such as
even our own understanding of democracy and what elections are all about and why we vote. The education on all of these issues matters. Then what you wanted to prove. The advocacy part for development, you realize that the marks were very high.
Yeah.
People expected
50.8%.
Yeah, advocacy for development. But I will also challenge, or I will wish to know, if they did an assessment of what the people thought they were answering. Whether advocacy for development, what does it mean?
Whether they understood.
Whether they understood even advocacy for development. I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm saying it will be interesting. Because you see, we are in the constituencies. And so, I'll give a practical example. There was a road in 2016 in my constituency that I lobbied, I went through urban roads, I went through the Ministry of Road, I got it to be captured and finally awarded, the project started. There was a change of government in 2016. The road got stalled. And anybody who has monitored me on platforms, anytime we talk about constituencies and some of these developments, I have raised the point and the need for that road to get back. I mean, the contractors to get back to work.
At the time you were lobbying, you were not an MP.
I wasn't an MP, yes. But I had a favorable government that was also minded to do, roads. So it was easy to lobby through that government. So I'm saying that I have done advocacy on this road. Now, fortunately, the road has been awarded again to a different contractor though. And the contractor is on site. But it will not be seen. Now, the MPP people in my constituency see it as their project. And the credit doesn't come to me, even though I have played that advocacy role. So I'm saying that it will be important to know if the measurement of advocacy is in line with what the researchers taught. I mean, the understanding of the people who are answering is in line with the researchers' understanding of advocacy. Because when the people say advocacy for development, trust me, I believe, and you can, if maybe a research can prove me wrong, I believe the understanding is that does he do development? That is why actually build roads, that he actually build hospitals. That is why in part of the research, you ask them to name projects that roads. The MP and roads that they have done.
Because you have indicated that
because
you have promised them.
So I'm saying that the understanding is also
There's a quick
important.
question I need to ask you, then we can move on to that. Out of the report that you've seen, what is it that you're taking out to help you improve your work? I'm curious because I've heard that criticism.
I'll tell you what I notice. People, I mean, in Greater Accra, for example, it was reported that majority of the MPs don't visit their constituencies. Now, I did a quick assessment, and I realized that in regions where the MPs have most offices, you had a problem of the people complaining that they don't see their MPs. So it is possible that the MPs, when even they go to the constituency, they sit in their office.
And you have to come to them.
And you have to come to them. And why that is also important is that...
But then you go to your people.
Wait a minute. I go because maybe I don't have an office. So I'm saying that,
better.
but you see, but what I'm saying is that what this tells me again is that 40%, we are told, of those who have communicated with their MPs, 75.4% of them say they are happy with the MP's response.
Yes.
40%. So my assumption is this: the 60% who don't communicate usually judge their MPs based on their own prejudice.
But who's supposed to communicate?
Wait a minute. I'll answer that. That's why I'm saying the takeaway. And the takeaway here for me is that when you look at public fora, they complained that there were not enough public fora. So for me, the challenge for MPs and Parliament is how we can engage constituents more. Because the more people engage with you, the more they understand and appreciate what you're doing.
Okay,
it is important.
Let me bring it.
It's an important research. But it also, our concerns have to be.
I expected the MPs to have a pushback, which is great. We are not discussing MPP and NDC now. There's still came up with a report that it's an equal opportunities hitter. It hits them very hard. Some of them are whinging and whining and crying like babies.
There's all of that. There's unity. There's unity in Parliament.
But it's important that the minority was singled out for praise. There he goes. There he goes again. Now we do better even in opposition.
Actually, everybody does better in opposition. No. It is good that we have this takeaway. We are discussing it. We are criticizing the report. They are learning. They are listening to the criticisms. But suggestions like they should come and sit down with you for what?
Agree on the parameters.
No. Why? Are you the one hiring them? Are you the one determining for the researcher how to research? The researchers can't read the constitution. Look, this is what's interesting. I'm pretty certain that Prof. Okwe has made you do research before.
He was the first to let me do. I've been a student for a long time.
I was a student too. So when you talk about inciting the people, this is research. They cannot sit with Parliament for Parliament to tell them which questions to ask. It's an opinion poll. It is the research. No. It's a research. I allow. Please, but him when you like. I like that.
No, I just wanted to say that is not what we are saying. We're saying that it's important we also understand.
You all don't speak with one voice. But anyway, you're inciting the people. Yeah. They went to ask questions, and the people responded. How is that incitement? Then it means that you become too sensitive to criticism. But you're public officials. Let me be sensitive to criticism because I'm a private person, but not you who's paid with our money. And if even a minority of your constituents said this, it is sufficient indication to you that maybe you're not doing something right. And I like how Suhina ended that. Look, maybe you need to engage more. Don't go and sit in your constituency office. The only people who come to your constituency office are your foot soldiers and the party people.
True.
The people across the aisle whose votes you need to carry the majority will not come to your constituency office. I don't know where the constituency office.
Meanwhile, when it's election time, you come
to our houses, right? So come to us. Now, you said that they should look at what the Constitution says. Well, there's a fundamental question. Is the MP a development agent? Did you come to me campaigning that send me to Parliament because I am such a great legislator that I'm going to make laws? Or when you came to my house, I said, I don't like the state of the road. They said, vote for me and let me do something about it. So you sell yourself as a development agent. In fact, you sell yourself as the only development agent. You say that the District Assembly's Common Fund, I'm going to use it to do X, Y, Z. When you are assessed on what you said you do, suddenly you say you are not a development agent and that you are just a legislator. You are there to pass laws. Really? So you want somebody to read the Constitution. Did you read the Constitution when you sold yourself that you are better than the other person? How were you better? Were you better as one who will make laws? I mean, so when you went to take that seat, did you say, send me there because I can pass very good public sector management act and stuff like that? That's not what you campaign on. We are judging you on what you said. If you don't like it, next time come and say something better. Then you change the narrative. Now, so this meeting, I think, is unnecessary. Let's criticize the report. And I'm sure the University of Ghana is enjoying this because suddenly they've thrown something out there in the mix and we are debating performance. You might disagree, but it's out there. Let's talk about it. Now, so the irritation isn't on. I think that parliamentarians should take it easy. Stop being irritated. This is not a national, they are not your WAEC. Right? Your WAEC will be in 2020. Yeah. They have commented on the work you're doing. The smart person will say, maybe I'm working hard, but these are lacunas, these are gaps in what I'm doing. I need to do X, Y, Z because my next election is 2020. It doesn't mean you are leaving Parliament to go and camp in your constituency and leave the work of Parliament undone. That will also fix you. It just means that when we elect you, we expect you to reasonably divide your time. But you don't sit. You don't sit every day of the week, right?
No, we don't sit.
You sit 4 days.
Yeah, only 4 days.
So 4 days. Yeah. So out of the 7 days, you are almost 50% to do everything else that you want to do. Go to your constituency, or however far it is, or however close it is. Isn't it interesting that it's the Greater Accra MPs who are most guilty of not visiting their constituencies? So where are they? In their homes? So you only work 4 days a week, apart from, there's committee work and everything. Not just that. You go on vacation. Our MPs go on long vacation as if they are students. Christmas, they go on break. Easter, they go on break. Then they have long vacation where there's no parliamentary sitting. What excuse do you have for not engaging with your people? So where do you spend the vacation? In the Seychelles, in England, or in Barbados?
In their constituency.
Yeah, so but if you indeed spend the time in the constituency and your constituents are not seeing you and complaining, then there's something wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong. and you got to deal with it. Look, take the point. You need to change Mr. Madam MP or change the narrative. Change or change the narrative. You have seen the areas in which they say you fall short. Address those. Look, ignore it. 2020 will show whether you are right or wrong. It's just next year. We will know. But my criticism of the researchers is that, where's the full report? How dare you just give us the quantitative and tell us that as for the qualitative, they should see in chambers? You put to why? Put it out there.
They don't want to shame anybody.
No. But we are paying the MPs with hard-earned money. They are buying cars with our loans. They are eating our money.
Those who want to contest in their constituencies actually pay people to do some of these qualitative.
I agree. But if you've done it, publish it out. Put it out there. What are you afraid of? Why are we so? And you see, this is the problem. Everything in Ghana is an exam. Everything is half protocol. Ronaldo, Messi. Yes, this is this. Put it out there. Let's know exactly what
Chelsea, Man United.
Well, I might say Chelsea, Barca. No, that's the whole idea.
CR7.
Number 66.
I didn't hear that.
So we didn't hear that.
No, I didn't.
So put it out there. Let's read it. And in the so-called advanced countries, this is what we see. They put it out. There's debate, vigorous debate. Democracy, and I'm ending with this. Democracy, Obama says, is a debate. You have a view, I have a view. It doesn't make you right or wrong, doesn't make me right or wrong. We exchange it. If we have compromise, we put it down and say, this is a decision. Yeah. Now let's continue to debate the other. So please, put it out there. Let's debate it. They are our servants. If you've done the work as the university, they're partly still on our subvention, then please, put it out. Let's all read it. And maybe, like you said, the qualitative would answer some of the questions we have on the numbers that you put out there. I would urge the political science department, put it out. Let's all read it.
Kweku, is the speaker justified?
Look, you see, when read the Hansard, I think that out there, I'm not sure if it's media reportage, but if you read the Hansard, a copy of which I have here, of course, this is the
Hansard of this week, when the matter came out.
Yes, the unedited version. If you do your research, you are capable of, and the edited version is little difference. Sometimes there's the grammar, typo, and things. You will not get the impression that Parliament was up in arms.
Exactly, that's the point
it's here.
I'm making.
That's Hansard, but the interviews they give to the press.
No, I'm restricting
individual MPs.
Well, that's individual, but the House, the House of Record, which is Parliament, and the contributions that were made on the floor, after which the Speaker concluded. Honestly, you see a certain constructive critique
and call for collaboration.
Yeah. That is what is here in this Hansard. It's very healthy. Unfortunately for me, I didn't monitor what individual MPs said outside. Then it's in conflict.
They went to town.
That would be, you see,
and negated all this.
That I'm disappointed in that, but unfortunately I didn't hear. I didn't monitor any of those things. But I may, you see, you know the timing of this research is coming towards the primaries.
NDC have theirs, I think, in July.
I'm not blaming, no. Yeah, but I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming the researchers
on the threats that this poses for the.
But I'm not blaming the researchers for the timing. I'm looking at what I've just been told, the response of some MPs. I'm looking at it from that perspective. The timing, perhaps the impact of this on their chances.
In fact, this week, some sponsors have issued statements asking their MP to not come and contest because somebody performed 11%.
I won't be surprised if those MPs who are being affected by this are those who who reacted that way outside the letter and spirit of this parliamentary proceedings. That was very healthy. Apparently, a year ago, there was a similar report. And yes, at that time, it was the first deputy speaker who raised the same issue today, who was presiding. And he referred the report to the Committee of Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs for them to look at it and see how best they could also craft a certain relationship with all these research groups, you know, going forward, what kind of survey to do and how to do it. Of course, we've now been told that this was constituency-based, meaning that the researchers themselves had predetermined that, look, we are not going to look at the lawmaking aspect. We are not going to look at the committee work. We are not going to look at the number of things you do within the House. They've restricted themselves. If that contest is within which they did their research, I would not be unduly worried if I were a member of Parliament. And I believe that is what the Speaker was advocating. Now look here, this is coming from academia. It's coming from a very important segment of the University of Ghana. They need to help us to move forward, and I believe in that. Look, Parliament is a very important institution. Anytime coups take place, you know that one vanishes. And it's been part of our problem as a nation. Okay, so going forward, to help consolidate Parliament, there's no basis to reject collaboration, and that's where perhaps I disagree with Ace in a way.
That's what
they
I
need
was
to
making
work
about
together.
the
They need to
because
collaborate.
of the peculiar nature of that institution.
So that subsequently,
and our history.
the researchers could also do another research, this time based on the work in the House, the committee work, the lawmaking, and also bring that out. It helps to enhance people's understanding and education relative to these things. Of course, bodies like the NCC and all the rest also must make an input in telling the world, the public, what Parliament stands for. So I don't think we should really be unduly worried, except the MPs who feel affected because of the primaries pending. That I can understand them, but they have no basis to go out attacking the integrity of such research findings, in my candid opinion. They can take it in good faith, find out how best they would be able to work within their constituency, and maybe address the defects that have been put forward. I remember Professor Mills, then President Mills, advocating at the State of Nation address. This is 2012. You know, I would read and explain. He was talking about there are the assignments, these are the assignment of National Service personnel as research assistants to MPs, the construction of constituency duty offices for honorable members, and this is key, the establishment of an MP's constituency development fund, separate and apart from the district assembly's common fund. Because as we all have agreed here, the MPs are not agents of development by the kind of constitutional architecture we put in place. It's the district assemblies. Unfortunately, they go out campaigning otherwise because you see they are campaigning on the party platform. The manifesto itself is selling that if we win elections, we will bring roads, hospitals, and things. So the MP, though an individual MP, not an agent of development, somehow is collaterally drawn into it because that's what your party manifesto says, and the party is selling its manifesto to the electorate. That political culture, it's going to be very difficult to break for a very, very long time. But we can begin. If we have this thing that President Mills proposed, Constituency Development Fund, separate from the District Assembly Fund, because what goes to the District Assembly Fund, only a little is given to the MP, even not physically, am I right?
And it's reduced more now.
No, it's capped now. It's capped. And I'm sure you don't receive it.
You don't receive it.
But you do projects
and
with
the
them.
assembly has to approve.
Yes. Either we educate our people, conscientize them to the extent that they know the MP has absolutely nothing to do with development, or we rebuild or retune our architecture. That's the way I see it.
I think that we have gone back and forth.
Quick comment on some of the interesting findings about 180 MPs.
But that was okay. That's an area where
that's what it is. That's what it is.
That's an area where all those who spoke, at least about 5 or 6, they appeared to be worried about, including the speaker. The issue of the assignment
and not the research work.
And to be fair, the speaker, this is what he said. He said, I will plead that we should understand these things because honorable members of parliament are representatives of the people so elected. To truth that they would leave the house en masse because of what somebody else has said is not fair to the institution of parliament or to the people's own representative power. In fact, it might, the operative word is might, it might be tantamount to incitement, and it is not fair. He wasn't really saying you were inciting the people. No, but he said might. We just sat here, we're looking at tweets and things. So no, we're looking at Baumia and his boring and things, and we wanted precision. So in terms of interpretation. But you see, truly, because Parliament vanishes off the landscape when coups happen and things, we've not had a situation where, in terms of the rate of attrition, we haven't, elsewhere, you can have a legislator who had been there for about 40, 50 years. Yes. It comes with experience. It's not just a personal benefit we are looking at. It comes with solid experience in terms of how the House works, in terms of lawmaking and things. That's, of course, not the fault of the researchers. If 185 exit, it's not. But I think the MPs were in a situation where if people understood the dynamics of legislative work, that the parliamentarian doesn't work only in the constituency, but does other works that combine to make him an effective MP, perhaps they would not go out there and say, because this MP didn't visit on this occasion, or because I didn't see the road that was promised, then this MP must exit necessarily.
In an instance where the minute you attack Mugabe, you're going to lose the election. Instead of saying that this experience that is benefiting the nation, then you know we will never get that accretion of experience.
Thank you.
Because after 2 terms, people are saying, it is still politicians.
They are public.
That's all. At the end of the day,
sometimes it's not even the consensus. The parties in their primaries, the party executive say,
you've been there now.
There's almost an arrangement that says
they forget the rate of attrition then, because they want to come into the house. It's a very valid point.
You see, and I just want to stress the point that Ankweku makes, and it's based on something I said initially about the nature of Parliament. I mean, of the 3 arms of government, it is the most fragile as we speak. It is the youngest, you know, so even though we are proud of our democracy and how well it is going, it is important that we protect it and help it grow, even as we criticize it to improve itself. And so those were some of the concerns that members raised about some of these reports and how those reports tend to cast that institution in light that can make it prone to attacks like it suffered in the past. And once the parliament is gone, we are back to square one. And that is why, even as we want it to improve, our criticism must be geared towards strengthening it and not, demonizing it. And I think that that point has to be made. But once again, I think that our disappointment is if I don't reiterate the point that the report also concluded that minority members of parliament are doing better in their constituencies, and I encourage them to continue to do more. And I think that even if we did an assessment of contributions on the floor, you will still get the same results. I'm sure you'll be disappointed.
Let me have a quick I'll come to
the last point, the point about a certain portion of the report being kept and MPs should contact them for it, only vindicates the point that they need to be cooperating. The speaker's point.
No, don't do it to us. Okay. We understand the thing. It's English. We can say, why are you hiding it?
Why not?
I would say that
also address for me all the things criticism we've had. Is that going to lead to any improvement in the work or changes in the way?
Definitely, any research work is not completely sacrosanct.
Is there the admission that there's something there that you could have done better?
No, definitely.
Which aspect?
Let's take even the sample size.
Okay.
If you had a larger sample size,
27,500. You wanted more?
That's what I'm saying. The best one would have been to interview all the 16 million. That's what I'm saying. But the point I want to make is that because of the way some of the MPs were attacking because of their the rating and so on, some of the very good things that we brought up got lost. There were a whole lot of theories about some of us doing some people's bidding and so on. So, for example,
it's Ghana for you. You cannot hold an opinion without being tasked.
Some of the
enjoy
things that I said. No, we have been doing it every time since 2016. We get this, so it's becoming normal. But some of the things that we brought up, which got lost, unfortunately, like MPs should carefully weigh their campaign promises, as constituents will hold them accountable for that. We raised issue about MPs, constituents being concerned about the MPs, not seeing them and so on. So they should find ways to improve. But my third point, and which I may elaborate a little, was that they must gauge the mood of their constituents in deciding whether or not to contest again. And I made the point here that in 2016, 50 incumbents lost their primaries, and 50 others lost the election. And from where I stand, looking at all these elections, sometimes you see a particular MP who had won by a margin of 40%, but gradually it's coming down. It is up to about 5%, and he still wants to go again. And I think I advise them over there that it's always better not to go that last one, and you said if I've gone, I would win, than to go and be defeated at the primaries or at the
But I disagree
election.
with you on that. I disagree with you on that. Allow them to contest if they will win the party primary, and let them go to the election, and then there will be a change. Anyway, by the qualitative side,
let
we all
me
should
mention
have-
this one. We raised some issue about first-term MPs. We made the point that normally, if people say don't come again, it's the Mugabes. But if you take those who have been fourth term to seventh term, about 1/3 of them still had the support of their respondents. On the other hand, the first-term MPs, 120 or so of them, and only as many as 80 got less than 50% support. So we had raised the issue whether there are some peculiar problems affecting these first-term MPs, and what can we do?
Did you find some? Did you find the issues?
Quickly, I will tell you that they may not have settled in yet.
Okay.
And yet, primaries are around the corner.
True.
Those who are there already also know how to deal with their constituents. These new ones who have come, they say, you are North. This one South. 2 new MPs. The one in the middle has been there for long, and he's doing his job well. So you are comparing. Those kind of comparison.
Which is what he has. Anyway,
I share boundary with my great minority.
Exactly.
I'm grateful that you joined us to
experience
explain the
and all,
issues.
and I always get that.
My guest still on
shoes are bigger than
Newsfile,
mine.
Abdul Malik Kubako, the very diabolical Hassan Suhini, who's still he's going to be with us. Asan Kuma is lawyer. Alex is, of course, from the University of Ghana Political Science Department. We're going to take a quick break now. When we return, we're going to move to the very controversial but also intriguing story of the kidnappings. The Canadian women who were kidnapped, rescued, raising many questions, and then we'll tie that in with what happened with Samofo Sampofu, who himself is a suspect in the kidnapping investigations. Stay with us here on Newsfile.
Yes, we are told not to.
It's still live on Newsfile. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. It's also on the Joynews channel on Multi TV. If you're watching us on Facebook, just go to our Facebook page. If you're not, you can watch the live stream there. We're also on YouTube, by the way. For those of you who are out and about, just get your phone and you get onto Facebook. Look for the Joynews channel. You'll find us there live streaming. And before we move on to the next big conversation, there's the communications directorate of the National Identification Authority had just sent me a quick statement for the attention of Asan Kuma. A quick response to Asan Kuma about NIA. He said the law allows NIA to register staff of institutions that apply for the service. We have registered staff of some institutions, but that service is currently on hold because of the mass registration we have started. It is a requirement of the law that we do mass registration first, followed by continuous registration, which will take place at NIA regional and district offices. For institutional registration, an institution must put in an application addressed to the Executive Secretary, the National Identification Authority, Head Office, Accra. When approval is granted, then the service is extended to the entity. And many thanks. Pam Betty is the communication director. So that's Ace for you. Okay, so we have a 30-minute extension on Newsfile because, as you can imagine, the terrorism, the kidnappings, and the politics of it has become one of the most topical issues, in fact, the topical issue this week. And so we're going to devote some time to this particular conversation in the next 1 hour or so, and we'll end at 12:30 on the dot. And we've shuffled the pack again. Joining me now is Colonel Festus Abaji, retired author, conflict analysis, and member council on foreign relations, Ghana. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Also with me, joining the panel now is Sami Jemfi, who is the communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. Still with me is Abdul Malik Kubako, who's the editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and Asan Kuma, who is a private legal practitioner. I want to quickly start on the Canadian girls. And this week, press conferences were held. I want you to take a listen to the government, Kojo Nkrumah, detailing how this whole daring rescue mission unfolded.
The operation involved the CID of the Ghana Police Service the Bureau of National Investigations, the Special Weapons and Tactics Unit of the National Security Council, and Defense Intelligence. No foreign assets were involved in the operation. I repeat, no foreign assets were involved in the operation. Satellite data from the Canadians is not correct. As I've mentioned, no foreign assets were involved in this operation. It is our understanding that this Canadian team was in town to explore ways by which they could help in rescuing these young ladies, but that was not necessary, as our security apparatus was on the ground and had clarity on what to do. So yes, it's true, there was a Canadian team in town. They were in town, we are told, to explore ways by which they could find other ways of helping with this matter. But as we are informed, our people on the ground had clarity on what to do, and the result is what you see currently. I've mentioned there are ongoing operations on similar matters, and the security apparatus encourages that we should be circumspect in our reportage and our public conversation because it has the potential of compromising some of the ongoing operations. I'll tie that to the first question about, is there more emphasis on Canadians or foreigners than on Ghanaians? No. The equal level of attention is being given to all of these crimes, regardless of which national is involved. But as has been mentioned, the security agencies require a lot of information and space so that they can do their intelligence gathering and deal with these matters. And we are hopeful that we can all support them by ensuring that they get that information and that space, and then they can get to the bottom of these matters. Just last week, some arrests were made in connection with that. That tells you that there's an active operation ongoing there. If anybody has further information, you can please do well to make it available to the security agencies. And the same level of seriousness that they attach to all of the others that have happened recently, which they have dealt with, they are applying that same level of seriousness. Ghana's security agencies continue to assure the general public, including Ghanaians and potential travelers, that Ghana is safe and they have what it takes to deal with any criminal enterprises that may spring up in the country. This is a couple of days ago, I think in a statement that we issued from this ministry on behalf of the National Security Ministry, they have just finished an appraisal and they have come to the conclusion that there are no imminent threats, no actionable intelligence, and that the risk and crime profiles of our country have not changed, and their men and their necessary logistics and equipment are available to them and on the ground to ensure that our safety is upheld. And I think that that position between the time we put out that statement and now has not changed.
Speaker, in today's world, where sadly crime and terror have become part of everyday life, I can say that Ghana is certainly the safest country in the West African region and remains one of the few places on earth where we're not embarrassed to see ourselves as each other's keepers.
So you just had the information minister, and just at the tail end, you had the president speak on this. I want to start with Kennel on this one. And Kennel, if you listen to Kojo, even in the press conference, he had to juggle between telling us what happened with the rescue of the kidnapped girls, but also at the same time addressing the tardy missing girls. In all those weeks when the story broke about first the kidnapping of the girls, Canadian girls, and then the subsequent rescue. That particular rescue mission has been looked within the context of what was happening with the tardy girls. Was that a fair way to look at it?
Well, it depends on the context. Okay. As long as the two cases relate to kidnapping, we're dealing with the same subject matter. And therefore, there is some room for comparison between the Canadians on the one hand and our own nationals on the other. But since then, almost everybody has come to the conclusion that, per se, the two incidents are different.
Please explain that.
The circumstances are different. The localities are different. The elements involved, i.e. the criminals, are different. And of course, bottom line, the approaches by the national authorities are also different. The involvement of foreign nationals actually now puts the Canadian one in a completely different context. And all of these are quite material. Indeed, I would want to add, and I've said this on another station a while ago, that in conflict analysis, the parties involved is part of the context. Now, if the parties have political affiliations, substantive or perceived, it's part of the context. And therefore, it's not very easy, I mean, you cannot easily dismiss the idea that some people are trying to politicize the issue. So let me come to...
I'll refer to that point you made when we come to that, because the politicization. You say that you cannot dismiss the fact that
it should be part of the context of analyzing the phenomenon of kidnapping.
Okay.
Because if I, as a freelance person, retired Colonel Abuaji, commit that crime without any political affiliation whatsoever, it's in a slightly different context from my colleague Sami Jemfi, who is known to be an NDC member, a senior official at that, committing the same crime.
Okay.
Indeed, my background as a military officer, retired, also, qualifies the context. Absolutely. So I want to say that whether the question now is not exactly whether they are MPP or NDC. The question is, do they have political affiliations?
Hold that thought, because we'll interrogate that substantively. Go to the substantive issues that you wanted to.
Now, I noted about seven dimensions or aspects of the statement that the minister put out. One is the question of foreign element. And it was categorical that there was no foreign involvement,
no foreign
assets in the operations itself. Now, that's very broad. The operations could be the tactical operation, that is the assault on the house. That is also part of the operation. But the operation didn't start and end with the assault on the house. The operation started with the collection of data intelligence, the processing, the preparations, the movements, and so on and so forth. Now, we need to answer the question, was there foreign involvement at any juncture of this process?
Interesting.
And on the basis of the evidence that we all have, yes, there was. There were Canadian experts who were flown into the country. I would have expected that the minister told us the exact role that the Canadians played.
You said they played no role.
No, that is, it's a bit too much.
Okay, so here's the thing. He was asked at the press conference when he read, he said no foreign assets were involved. He repeats that, but that was in the context of the operation, to rescue. And then when there was a question and answer session, this question was asked, the one that you just posed. And then he elaborates and says, they came here to explore, I'm trying to paraphrase, to explore ways of assisting. But in the end, it wasn't necessary. And so we did all this by ourselves.
Now, what I've been trying to establish is that the term operations is not only the tactical aspect of the operation. The operation starts with the moment when the girls were kidnapped and all the efforts that the government, with or without cooperation, collaboration with international partners put in. Now, that process included intelligence gathering, intelligence processing. It included monitoring, certain activities. It might have included interrogating certain individuals remotely suspected to have been connected. When the Canadians came in, obviously they had consultations. They might have had some views, some recommendations to make. We now know, contrary to what the minister said, that there was an aspect of ransom. Not paid, but demanded.
Okay.
Now, we know that in that process, the call to the family in Canada would have been made available to the Canadian authorities, who would have made that same information available to the mission here and to the experts. Now, I find it a bit difficult that throughout all of this process, the Canadians didn't have any substantive contribution to make. Some have suggested, and I think to some extent they may be right, that given the access that Canadians supposedly have, that we may not have, it is possible that in their system, the subsequent conversations with the kidnappers, because I've read somewhere that the family said they couldn't pay 850, they could only pay 47,000, whatever it is. Look, for all you know, that conversation was not by the family. It could have been by security experts within the Canadian system, either based in the embassy here or based in Ottawa, you see. So all that I'm trying to say that, yes, the minister said they were not involved in the operations. Indeed, even to leave this aside, diplomatically, it would have been better to have pronounced the country's appreciation to the concern that the Canadians showed, and in diplomatic terms, to thank them for their contribution without going into details. Now, not to have done that and to have tried to suggest that they played no role with a little diplomacy that I know, I think it's not politically correct.
That's what the Canadians did. The Canadians, the Canadian High Commission to Ghana on the Twitter account did what you're suggesting. That they thanked us.
Yes.
They didn't even thank the government of Ghana, but thanked the Ghanaian citizens.
That's right.
For showing that empathy and care about.
But you know how we can nuance that. We also needed to have reciprocated. Indeed, we should have said that first. Okay. And let me remind all of us that rescuing the girls or releasing them, it's not that we've done Canada a service. We have an obligation under international law to protect every human being within our boundaries. And therefore, what we did was a duty under international law or in international law. But I'm saying that, to cut it short, that it wouldn't have cost us anything if we had used that platform, that public platform, to have thanked the Canadian authorities. And indeed, I've read somewhere that even the United Kingdom also gave us some intelligence or whatever it is. You know, there's nothing wrong. It's part of the art of diplomacy. You see, even if they haven't played any role at all. I don't know whether we want to stretch this case, but the question of the ransom, again, doesn't cast us in good light. You see, if ransom was asked, we must state that ransom was asked for, although we didn't pay. In other words, the comprehensiveness of the minister's statement was it wasn't comprehensive. In fact, he should have taken all the dimensions of the process, all the operations, and pronounced himself on that. Again, I find it a bit revealing, at least for myself, that the minister chose to use the prerogative of the government to tell us about the rescue or the release mission. And nobody else on that platform had anything to say. Yes, we may choose in this country to do our things our own way. But any time similar incidents happen elsewhere, especially in the US, you will see behind the microphone, because normally they're standing in the open, you see the mayor, you see the governor, you see the sheriff, the chief, whoever, you see the police chief, you see all of them. And all of them are given the chance to explain a bit of their angle to the operation. That, I think, going forward, we should do. Why we chose this time not to allow the police to speak. We can go back to the table and analyze it. But I have said just now on TV3 that, are we trying to gag the police? In other words, the police previously made a certain statement or made statements that we found not to be politically correct or palatable. So this time, let's keep the police. Now let's put out our own information. Now, whether it was national security, the minister, my good friend, Colonel Michael Opoku, whether it was the police CID chief, commissioner of police, Mami Adudankwa Tiwa, and so on and so forth, fine. But some of them should have been given the opportunity. Look, it's all part of the process of building capacity. If somebody erred, misspoke on one occasion, it doesn't mean going forward, you know, they shouldn't talk again.
I know you make a point. I'll come to that because we'll take a second look at some of the other additional points. I want to quickly bring Kweku in. on these points you've made, and then we'll come back to some other things.
Well, at any day, any time, when it comes to matters of this nature, I would defer to Colonel because of his in-depth knowledge, experience, and everything.
Yeah. Wait for it.
But my knowledge and information relative to this issue contradicts some of the conclusions and interpretations that the good Colonel has made. Look, the ransom thing, and I'm picking them one by one. The ransom thing, the guys, as indicated, communicated this to the girls' families. That's a fact. The UK team that came down, which was widely reported as Canadian experts, the British, they belong to a certain life insurance entity. And they had come with the mission to negotiate with the kidnappers.
So they are a UK team, not a Canadian team.
But they were being assisted, I guess, by a life insurance team, and this team were in charge of that. So they had been asked by the girls' families to come. There was no negotiation between the Ghana government or the Ghanaian security and the kidnappers relative to ransom. Nothing happened, nothing of that sort happened. Indeed, this UK team that came, that were interested in negotiating relative to anything concerning ransom, did not even get a chance to negotiate with the kidnappers. Two, the Canadian team that came, in fact, it was one person. He's the security coordinator for Canada relative to this region. He's based in Morocco. I'm sure Kenna knows what I'm talking about. He came a day before the rescue operation. A day before. So he had practically no role to play. And indeed, when the rescue happened, he was surprised and went to the national security to express his gratitude. Three rather, there's this point about a certain CCTV thing, which some people have attributed to the Canadians in terms of enhancement. That's also false. That thing was not clear. The enhancement was done by Ghanaian national security. It had absolutely nothing to do with the Canadians. I'm sure, I'm told it's one of your reporters who put it somewhere on social media. This is Erastus Asaredonko. This is not factual. It didn't happen. The enhancement, I repeat, was done by Ghanaian national security assets. So strictly speaking, the minister was right when he said there was no foreign assets involved in the operation, which can always say tactical aspect, and also not involved in intelligence gathering.
Interesting.
Yes, I'm saying so.
So from the beginning to the rescue.
And that is why the Canadian embassy would do what they did, and not us. They were showing appreciation. That's why they did it. Even if we have to compliment it, really, it was for them to do it first. It is true rescuing that was not doing them a favor. So we're doing ourselves to a favor. After all, our image was on the brink in terms of security and things. So in rescuing them, we were also rescuing our own integrity as a nation. But the Canadians recognized, and they are listening to us. They are watching us.
They cannot speak.
They cannot speak, but they know I'm speaking the truth. They know that I'm speaking the truth. That their coordinator, who is based in Morocco,
one person,
yes, came to Ghana the day before.
And he was surprised at the rescue.
He went to the national security to express gratitude, and it's documented. Then the embassy also did what they did. So relative to this particular case, the minister was factual.
just a question on that. In the minister's press conference, he confirmed, though, that yes, the Canadian team were in town. So, one person is on a team.
Let the minister explain that. That's what I meant by the British team that came.
Okay.
That team that came for the Canadians, for the girls, they were representing a life insurance entity. And they had come in on behalf of the Canadians to actually negotiate the ransom request that the guys had put in.
So when the minister interpret, when the minister says the team, yes, the team was in Ghana and exploring.
It was that team on behalf of the Canadians. The minister may clarify that. It's not for me to do so, but I'm telling you. And don't forget, I'm not talking based on only sources to government sources. You know me. I also have, yes. So I also have done my checks. Yes, thank you. I've also done checks.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm saying that really, if it's an issue on so many other matters, I will not contest one bit of anything Kenneth will say. But in this specific instance, and it's this instance I'm talking about, based on the checks I have done, both with Ghanaian authorities and non-Ghanaian authorities, the facts I've put here are the real facts.
Please.
Well, it's great meeting Kenneth for the first time. I've admired him from a distance. And meeting Sammy too, actually. Nice to meet you. As for Jam here and I, basic points. In criminal law, abduction is different from kidnapping. And I think that we must watch the language of it. The law itself is contradictory. Also, it uses the word abduction in the English sense of the word. But in criminal law, abduction is when actually there's a kidnapping of a child for the purpose of sexual intercourse. So there's a distinction between the two. So
that is when it's what?
When it's abduction.
Okay.
You can say it in a normal English way of speaking, but once you get into the realm of the law, what happened was a kidnapping. They're not beneath the age of 18, so they're not children, so we can't even talk about it being abduction. But it's just a fine legal point. It doesn't mean much, except you're in the law courts. Two, on the ransom issue, what did the minister say? He said no ransom had been demanded from the government. What I understand happened was that the kidnappers contacted the girl's family in Canada and made the demands. Some part of the story that appears contradictory, and listen to quickly right now, that apparently the life insurance people came in here to negotiate the ransom. I'm wondering whether they communicated that as their aim to the government authorities, because what the national what information seems to suggest is that it was when the rescue happened that our authorities got the hint that there had been a ransom demand. But
yes,
it's
true in terms of sequence.
Yes, in terms of sequence. But
the Canadian family, they knew ahead.
The Canadian knew ahead. So there's the issue of even how much communication we must have received from the Canadians. And when we talk about that, we might have to distinguish between the nationalities of the people who came and who they were representing. So there's a fine timeline. So that what the minister said was true. The government did not receive a ransom demand. But the reality is that the ransom demand was made to the family. So we can easily reconcile that and put that in. But even with respect to technology, there would be no shame to have collaborated with the Canadians. But I also think that due to the historical failures that have been highlighted, sometimes we don't even believe when the Ghanaian has done something.
Exactly.
Our technology level has gone very high, but others are still ahead of us in technology. I'll give you one small case. This was a matter I was involved in. A guy in Ghana employed by a foreign entity decides to harass his employers, registers an email address, and starts sending threatening emails to his employers. By the time we were hired, they had checked which computer he was using. They knew that it was a particular internet cafe in a certain part of Accra, and he was using this computer when he went this day. He used that because IP addresses are registered. So you can't mask them. So there's communication. And the minute you get on phones and the rest, the technology people will tell you they can easily track it. Even if you don't know that, you can watch movies and you'll find that there are ways of tracking. The criticism on the Takrady girls and the Canadian women, I think they're all women. is fair. But there's also and maybe because of the Takoradi situation, it's very difficult to accept that we did this.
Yeah.
Colonel is right. The circumstances differ. Time of reporting. For those of us in the legal side of it, the time of reporting is critical. If it's a week, the kidnapped person might be in Australia.
Yeah.
Even if they were walking, they would have gone out of Ghana. Then the trail gets colder and it's more difficult to track because now you have to talk to too many people. This, I understand, the report was within an hour. If it's within an hour, they hadn't even settled with the women. So the trail was so warm. And as we are hearing, there were CCTV cameras that picked up a lot of these things. What I'm saying is that we need to move to a situation where Ghanaians understand if you see something, say something.
Immediately.
Call it ICE.
Yeah.
If you see something, say something. We are an inquiring people, but there's a part of which says, I don't want to get into trouble. Yeah. Now, if you see anything that looks suspicious, say something. That's what brings in the issue about police, numbers that we can reach the police, that yes, people might abuse it, but a lot of intelligence gets to the police on the spur of the moment if the Ghanaian knows whom to call, when to call, where to call. That is probably the biggest advantage to this rescue, which unfortunately does not appear to have to the benefit of our own citizens who went through that in the Western region. If the child is out of the house for 24 hours, call the police. We all have to learn to do these things. I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened over there, but that is what, if the trail gets cold, it's more difficult to do the rescue. And so as these things happen, let's begin to, let's begin to ask ourselves questions, how we can assist. Look, there might not have been a lot of Canadian involvement, but I happened to be in Kumasi the day the story broke. If you've worked in how some of us work, you can see Kumasi was crawling with intelligence, national security intelligence. You could see them. They were all over the hotels. Of course, they try and mask themselves, but you can tell that these are intelligence people. Once the rescue happened, I even suspect, or know that the Canadian embassy moved people into Kumasi.
Yeah, they were there.
But the people I saw were Ghanaians.
Okay.
Were Ghanaians. Because there's a need for the blend in, etc., etc. Maybe one should be saying this on me. The need for the blend in that a white person will stand out, stick out. So there was Kumasi was crawling with intelligence operatives. So we had this, we got this. Let's mark that down. What lessons do we learn from this to inform us going forward? What lessons do we learn from the Takoradi experience? And my information is that the Takoradi thing isn't being taken easily. He made a very good point about the politics of it. This has been politicized.
Yeah.
Some of what I have seen, the operatives working is amazing. But of course, they can't come and tell us. And somebody made a mistake and the tank slipped and it's in trouble. Because there was a point where they were almost at it. If you speak too much, people get moved. So, but my point to all of us as Ghanaians, please, if you see something, say something. The government of Ghana keep telling us the numbers that we can call. Then even if it's a hoax, at least you have an idea who's been calling you with hoax. Well, we know who will cry wolf. But if we continue to like the matter, then we can discuss it on social media, but we are reticent about engaging to make sure it is fixed. This is only going to get worse. The borders are disappearing quickly. And spiriting people across borders is as easy as that. We need to change our attitude to law enforcement. Maybe we should not see the police as just a bunch of people who are on the side of the road to arrest us or take our money. But if we see that if there's a continued engagement with them, maybe the majority of Ghanaians will feel more comfortable in calling them and not saying, well, if I say it, I might be the one to be arrested tomorrow, etc., etc. If you see something, say something. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Just a quick point, my producers are just alerting me that each of the Takoradi kidnapped girls were reported to the Takoradi police within 24 hours of their disappearance. In fact, the family say when they got there in one of the police stations, they were asked to sit for so long until, they were not taken
Yeah, but I didn't say that. I'll just give you an example.
Just report as quickly as possible.
I'm just giving the report as soon as possible. If you delay, there's going to the trail will get cool.
So I think from Ace, you made the point, and I think Ken also started with it about you cannot discount the politics of this. And I think the point that Ken makes is that it's not a question of whether it's MPP or NDC, it's whether or not there is a political affiliation of the players involved. Sammy, your national chairman was this week arrested, and he's a suspect in the kidnapping investigations. This is not necessarily the girls, this is not the Canadian women, but the police statement says he's a suspect in kidnapping investigations, including also arson, right? So that's where this becomes relevant. The party's position is that that is a political move to sort of mask the real reasons why this is happening, and that the individuals who have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of the Canadian girls many of them are MPP activists. That actually disproves the police's suspicion that your chairman may be a suspect in the kidnappings, and that is the other way around. Explain that for me.
Evans, thank you very much, and I think you have expressed or summarized our position on this matter very accurately. But even before I deal with the politics of this issue, let me make the point that the rescue of the 2 kidnapped Canadian girls and the arrest of the perpetrators is refreshing and commendable. Issues about whether or not there was collaboration between the Canadian authorities and our security agencies, issues about whether or not ransom was demanded and whether or not Ghanaian authorities were in the know of that fact, to me, must be probed further. Because as it is now, the facts are not very clear. I know Erastus Asaredonko to be a very reputable, credible, well-researched media person. And for him to have put this information out, that indeed there was some collaboration between the Canadian authorities and our security agencies, and that they actually employed technology to enhance some CCTV footages and all that, cannot be brushed aside, just like that, in my honest opinion. Obviously, Uncle Kwekubako also has his own sources, so we need to probe those issues further. But for me, the key issue there is that our security services must show more attention relative to the 3 kidnapped Takoradi girls. And I think that is a legitimate point to make. Evans, it's been 6 to 8 months since these girls were kidnapped. Situation that has caused their parents and all well-meaning Ghanaians much grief and pain. That grief and pain has been exacerbated by the unprofessional conduct of the CID boss, the false assurance she gave, the comedy of errors, and the many cases of contradictions we have seen on the part of key security actors relative to that matter has exacerbated their pain and grief. And so far, that does not send the signal that we are serious about that matter. And so we want to see the same alacrity and the effort that our authorities invested in the investigation of the kidnapping of these 2 Canadian girls being employed in the investigation of the 3 Takoradi girls, because Ghanaians also matter. And that is the first point I want to make. Now, with regards to the politics of the issue, Evans, ordinarily, matters of security, matters of crime should not be reduced to partisan political goal scoring. Here I'm not saying politics. There are some who say that matters of security should not be politicized, which I disagree with, because security is a political issue. But my position is that matters of crime, matters of security must not be reduced to partisan political goal scoring. But there are some circumstances, certain circumstances, under which it becomes necessary for us to interrogate the political affiliation of suspects who, are arrested in such matters. Number one, like you rightly pointed out, we have a situation where the largest opposition party in the country, the NDC, is being branded by government spokespersons and government officials as a party of kidnappers. Today, our national chairman stands accused. He's a subject of investigation in relation to recent cases of kidnapping in our country.
In fact, the police statement calls him a suspect.
A suspect. Now you listen to government communicators speak, and the sad impression is created that peace-loving, law-abiding citizen Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo is a kidnapper. And so,
suspected.
Of course,
I don't know whether
some of the communicators
or is a facilitator.
express that point in a very conclusive manner. We are being, you see, we are being demonized, we are being bastardized out there, and so on. And so, if today's suspects have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of the 2 Canadian girls, and we know them to be active, popular members of the New Patriotic Party, that fact becomes material. Okay. And here we are not seeking equalization, neither are we seeking to score any political point. We are basically clearing the name of our national chairman and the corporate image of the National Democratic Congress. We are defending ourselves because out there in the public, in the court of public opinion, our national chairman is being branded as a kidnapper. And so if we have information to show that those, our accusers, those who are accusing us, are rather the ones who are engaging in these, dastardly acts of kidnapping and violent crime, we are entitled to put those facts out there for Ghanaians and the world to know who the real kidnappers are and the political parties they belong to. Now, number 2, I agree with Kennel when he made the point that political parties are key stakeholders in the security architecture of Ghana. Our actions and inactions have a bearing on our security. It can either impact negatively or positively on our security. And so when political parties in their actions promote social vices, those political parties must be called out. They must be named and shamed as a way of dealing with that menace. And that is why, Evans, you in particular in Joynews, took upon yourself to expose and help eliminate the phenomenon of vigilantism. I'm sure you remember that. When, not too long ago, there was a shooting incident at our Ashanti Regional, NDC office. You saw the statement which was released by the Ashanti Regional Police Command. They described the suspects as members of the NDC's hawks, even though that was a pure criminal matter, Evans. But people said that was legitimate because we needed to discourage the culture of vigilantism. You understand? And so if today we are finding out, based on incontrovertible evidence, that at least 4 of the 8 suspects, the Ghanaian suspects, who have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of these 2 Canadian girls, are members of the dreaded Delta Force of the New Patriotic Party. People cannot blackmail us from putting that information out. It is relevant because you, Mr. Ankoma, Mr. Bako, we all cautioned against that this culture of forming vigilante groups in all the 10 regions of Ghana, supporting them. The situation we had not too long ago where some of these MPP vigilante groups unleashed terror on course of competent jurisdiction and were left off the hook, attacked officials of our security services, government appointees and all that, should be checked by government, and that it could degenerate into some of these issues. So if that is happening now, the MPP cannot say, don't blame us, don't hold us responsible. If you do that, you are politicizing the matter. And then again, in this whole discussion, Evans, consistency is key. Principle is key. People cannot approbate and be reprobating at the same time. Look, when you look at page 147 of the NPP's 2016 manifesto, security was made a very serious matter, a very political issue. In summary, what they said there, for purposes of time, I may not be able to read. They sought to blame what they described as the state of insecurity at the time on former President John Dramani Mahama. He said, the security situation in the country was, worsening because he was incompetent and promised to improve on that, make Ghanaians feel safe and secured and all that. When they came into office, they have appointed a minister for national security. They've appointed a minister of state in charge of national security. they've appointed, you know, they have a Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense, and so on. I've heard people like Mr. Baku make the point that, oh, the numbers don't really matter. Let's look at the outcomes and the results. Yes, I agree with that. And like my brother Suhini told you earlier, to whom much is given, much is expected. If today, in spite of the promise they gave the people of this country on the basis of which they were voted for, if today, in spite of the many security appointees they have and all that, security per official statistics of the Ghana Police Service is worsening, and that is affecting the reputation of Ghana, people cannot expect us to have a conversation about security without bringing in the MPP's promise in the run-up to the 2016 election. That also is material. Now, what are the facts, Evans? What are the facts? The facts are simple. One of the arrested suspects, by name Seydou Yakubu, is an ardent supporter, in fact, a staunch member of the New Patriotic Party, and this is not our creation. On the 22nd, no, you see, it's not. Even armed robbers, when they are arrested, deny their complicity. It's not about whether or not they've denied. What does the evidence show? On the 22nd of February 2019, even before Seydou was arrested, he granted an interview to Kumasi Big Sports FM. In that interview, he was asked a specific question. Are you a member of the NDC? He said, no. I am an MPP member, and everybody knows that to be the case, and that I actually founded the Abuabu Kifit Club of the MPP 12 years ago. The MPP cannot run away from that. They deny that. The tape is there. We have given the tape to your reporter, Parker. You see, so it's not about their denial. It is about what the evidence. Say, like Dr. Bawumia said, we have brought our evidence. If you disagree, bring your own evidence. Number 2 on the list is Abdulrahman Suleimana. This Abdulrahman Suleimana, who on his Facebook wall confesses and professes to be a member of the New Patriotic Party at Asawase. He uses his Facebook wall to promote the activities of the New Patriotic Party. And these are all matters of public record. Another suspect, Safiano. So you see, today, the smearing campaign and that evil agenda against our national chairman, has backfired, and it has backfired very terribly. Ghanaians know who the kidnappers are and from what political parties, they are coming from. And I think that our brothers in the MPP must acknowledge these facts. The CID, the Tiwa Adodankwa CID, must begin to look at these vigilante groups in the New Patriotic Party, in their investigations, and stop focusing solely on the person of Mr. Ufuswampopo when there is no actionable intelligence or any evidentiary basis for that. That is our submission.
We'll take a quick break. When I come out here from Keno and Kweku, and then take a brief comment from Ace, and then we'll wrap up. Stay with us here on Newsfile. And you are live on Newsfile, and so when you're having fun, time really flies. We've extended by 30 minutes, and we still have just 3 minutes to wrap up. And so that's where we are on this subject. So, Keno, briefly, if you can, because I still want to see if we can hear a minute from Kweku on this. A minute for yourself as well, if you can. Just wrap up for me on what Kweku says is ceded his time to you. So, Keno, I want you to address you started the issue about the politics of this and why it's important. Going forward, we still have to solve the Tade conundrum, right? We can learn lessons from Canada as well. Where do you stand on how we proceed doing? Because this is a new trend. The president is worried. Everybody is as well.
The kidnapping, you mean? It's not a new trend.
No, I mean, in terms of... okay, I get you because the police statistics show it. But in terms of
the foreign element.
Exactly, the foreign element.
First of all, it would be my hope that the second suspect, John Oji, is able to provide information that is both credible, substantive, that can help the police now, if you like, to make the trail a bit warm. But I'm afraid that given all the time that has passed, and given that he disappeared back to Nigeria, I wonder whether he's going to disclose where the girls are. And even if he discloses where the girls are, whether indeed the girls are under his control. So, putting all things together, and I believe the police are doing that, we need to expand and deepen the collaborations that we have with our neighboring police organizations, especially Togo, Benin, Nigeria. We need to do similarly with the Interpol branch in West Africa, the WAPCO, then of course Interpol. And at this stage, Americans are already helping us. I think they can, give us substantive help, the UK, Canadians, and so on. Now, coming back home, I've said that our approach to matters of security in this country appears to be ad hoc. So it was terrorism, we got hyped up. Now it is kidnapping, we're hyped up. It's galamsey, we're hyped up. Now, all along, you're beginning to ask, where is the national strategy for addressing our security concerns?
So we need
you don't
one.
see the strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially
we
now,
need to think through the issues.
Ace, sure. That's all I have, in fact.
30 seconds.
Sorry, we don't have that.
50 seconds.
Ace, no, because
I heard what you said.
Yes, sir.
What you are really saying is that, and I feel your pain. We have criminals in the NPP. We have criminals in the NDC. Ghanaians know that. You guys stop this game. All right? We know that. And you didn't go out to recruit criminals. They joined you. They are Ghanaians. So some Ghanaians are criminals. Right? The slurring and the tagging isn't quite. And soon you would lose the ears of Ghanaians with this, because all we hear is that you're always trying to take political advantage. I hear, look, the police, if it turns out that there's nothing against Mr. Example, can you imagine what it will do to the credibility of the police? So let the things unravel. But my last thing, and agreeing with this, is this, and I need to restate it. Let's be more inquisitive. But the police, the reaction to reports, and I wanted to put this out, that there had been a stealing, the person was running away with the bag. We tried to enter Nima police station, and they said we came by the wrong road. Everybody had to sit in the car and go back and come in by the right entry before they would listen to us. By the time they went through, you came back the wrong road, the bag had been dumped, the person had disappeared. This is something that has to be dealt with. Instead of fighting the form, what is the substance? And if we don't do that, we're going to have these problems.
Isan Kumar is a lawyer. Sami Jemfi is communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. Kenneth Festus, retired Abaji, is a security analyst who joined us. Kukubaku Jr., really insightful thoughts.
I prefer Abdul Malik.
Abdul Malik Kukubaku Jr., yes.
Don't add the junior if it's Abdul Malik.
Okay.
Senior is no longer with us, so no need for...
No junior. If it's Abdul Malik.
Abdul Malik Kukubaku.
Thank you.
Thank you very much all for joining us via Joy FM and also the Joynews channel. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Took your normal last.
Yes.
MTN. Welcome to the new world. Bank of Africa. As strong as a group, as close as a partner.
Eden Heights. Welcome home.
Waylead has all the solutions.
GBS trust.
MoneyGram, bringing you closer.